All right, I'm going to call the meeting of the Sanborn Regional School District to order. We can stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, so we have a doozy here tonight on the minutes. We have 3 sets of minutes that we need to review and take action on. Do I have any motions?
I've had this for 6 years.
I make a motion to approve the action on the minutes on 5/25, but I do on 6/1, there does need to be a correction.
Okay. All right, do you want to do them one at a time?
Yes.
Okay, so your motion.
Motion to approve 5/25.
Second.
Okay, discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, unanimous? Okay,
So in 6/1, it's under policies, it says, Mr. Fitzpatrick said, I think everyone has reviewed the policies and this is the first time that we are seeing it. So I don't have any concerns, but I think Jamie said this is not the first time we were seeing these.
I did, yeah.
Yeah.
Because we had them in the file. Yep.
So just wanted to make sure that that was correct.
I didn't pick up on that. Thank you.
So on 6/1, under all of the policies, it says Ms. Mahoney made a motion to approve first and second by Ms. Ingham. And then there was a discussion comment from Jamie, and it said, this is the first time that we are seeing it, but it should be, this is not the first time we are seeing it. I read it twice because
I didn't notice it at all.
good catch. All right, so would you like to make a motion to approve the minutes with the,
So I make a motion to approve minute 6/1/22 with the changes to the comment from Mr. Fitzpatrick under policies.
I'll second.
any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous? Okay. Minutes of 6/16/22.
Bless you. I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, unanimous? Great. All right, I have manifest documents. I'll start signing those and sending those around. Tom, nominations.
Thank you. I have a few nominations. One is Adrian Alfred for Principal of Memorial School. We are very glad to have him join our team. Blair Balsa will be joining us for the 8th grade science technology position. Nicole O'Brien as Assistant Principal of the high school, and Timothy Westfall as the Assistant Principal of the high school. I just wanted to say just to note that many of our candidates for principalships and assistant principalships had many opportunities, and they chose to join Sanborn, and we are very, very happy about that. Really excited.
Can I just go on that?
Sure, yeah. Yeah, you did all the committees.
Yeah, there was a number of interview committees that consisted of parents, teachers, school board members,
Administrative assistants.
Yeah, so there was
paras.
a large group of people that got together, and it was quite good to see that in the end, the people always make separations of people that they're in this category, they're a parent, or they're a teacher, or they're administrator, they're a school board. There was pretty good unanimity in the assessments of the candidates, and it was a strong group consensus that these are the right candidates from all the parties involved. So that was nice to see. So I just thought I'd mention that.
Thank you. Just one last thing. I'll thank the board for unanimously supporting the candidates that the teachers chose. That's important to note. Thank you for that.
Do I have a motion?
Make a motion to approve the nominations.
Second.
All in favor? Unanimous? All right, resignation. Sorry.
Resignations, we have 4. Anthony Foy, music teacher. Kelly Coburn, first grade teacher. Melissa Khalil, pre-K teacher. And Heidi Arestis, library teacher. Well, she was formerly a science teacher at the high school, but was slated to be library next year. Or at the middle school, I apologize.
Do I have a motion?
Take a motion to approve with regret.
Second.
All in favor? Unanimous.
Tag team tonight, Maura.
Your report.
My report is relatively brief, but I do want to read it. Just wanted to talk a little bit about our hiring. We've had a really good season for hiring, particularly administrators. And I did send this notice out to the staff and the community a few moments ago. We're all very sad to see some of our administrators move on to bigger and better opportunities. We're very happy for them and wish them well in their new roles. Fortunately, we've had some excellent new hires. I want to thank the fun and energetic group of staff, parents, and school board members who met to conduct interviews for our building administration staff. For the high school principal position, we had 2 teams of over 20 participants. Diana Rooney and I participated in each group, and we were impressed by the process. We also invited 4 students, including JJ, to meet with the 2 principal finalists, give them a tour of the building, and talk to us about what they liked with each candidate. It was really good. Diana and I were in each group. Diana took one group, and I took the other group, and we were impressed by the process and the great questions and insights of all the team members. The school board unanimously supported the staff and the interview committees by recommending the following new hires. For high school principal, we have Jim DePeel. Jim has served as the principal of the Silver Lake Regional High School in Kingston, Mass. For the past 11 years. He brings his innate ability to work with staff and students to promote a positive culture, safe environment, and student-focused learning environment. For high school assistant principal for discipline, we have Timothy Westfall. He's been an assistant principal at Franklin High School for the last 2 years, and prior to Franklin, he worked at Goffstown High School for 17 years as a teacher and then as an interim dean of students before taking his first administrative job at Franklin. He's committed to positive student conduct with the high school and will help the administrative team develop a positive culture among the staff and the students. High school assistant principal and curriculum coordinator is Nicole O'Brien. She taught at Pinkerton Academy for 9 years. In January, she took an interim assistant principal position in Merrimack, New Hampshire for the middle school. Despite having multiple job offers, she decided to join Sanborn, and we are really excited to have her bring her knowledge of curriculum, instruction, and students to our team. For the middle school assistant principal, I don't know why, but we had 2 candidates from Franklin. Jay Trafton is joining us. He spent the last 4 years as assistant principal of Franklin Elementary School. His experience building a positive culture of student behavior and academic engagement will be a great addition to the middle school. Memorial School principal Adrian Alford served as assistant principal at the Northwood School in Northwood, New Hampshire for 6 years. So he's been an assistant principal for 6 years. He comes from a counseling background. He was a school counselor. He brings a commitment to enhancing student learning while maintaining a positive culture among staff and students. Adrian's, he's kind of funny. He's a great guy. He's got a great sense of humor, and he's all about the students, and he really can't wait to meet more of the Memorial School community. The Memorial School assistant principal is Meredith Devine. She served as the assistant principal of student services at the Clark Wilkins Elementary School in Amherst, New Hampshire for the past school year. Prior to that, she was a special education coordinator at the Merrimack Middle School in Merrimack, New Hampshire for 7 years. Her knowledge of special education and building relationships with staff, students, and families will be a tremendous asset to Memorial. A number of our new administrators have prior experience. So we've got some folks that have had a few years of experience. They're joining our team, and they're bringing incredible positive energy already. I did also want to note that we have filled, despite the national and state level difficulty filling administrative positions. Not only have we filled all of our positions, but we filled them with experienced people. There are districts that are literally having to ask staff to take administrative roles and get emergency local authorization per a letter from Frank Edelblue today because they can't get administrators. So kudos to everyone on our team, from the staff to the parents, the board, for attracting some of the best candidates in the pool this year. It's really something to celebrate. Thank you.
reports. I guess we can just, if you have a report, raise your hand and we'll, all right, you have a report? All right, start with Jamie.
Yeah, I have a finance committee report from June 1st. Attending were Mr. Elliman, myself, Mr. Angel, Mr. Ambrose, and Ms. Bashaw joined the meeting in progress. Minutes of 2:23 and 4:23, May 4th were reviewed. Typo in there. Mr. Elliman motioned to approve. Fitzpatrick second. Both Elliman and Fitzpatrick voted to approve. M. Bashaw had not joined the meeting at that time. Mr. Angel reviewed business administrators. Comments. Electric roll rates. You will seek rates from 5 companies in November. We'll try to incorporate the towns in the negotiations. The group net metering, that team met on May 26th. That's the group that's looking into solar in Kingston. They received 3 proposals to evaluate the project. The next meeting is June 8th, which is in the past. Expectation that the vendor will be selected for providing proposals and options to the committee. Mr. Angel is concerned that power from the grid would be at retail price, which is his concern. He may need reserves in case the site goes down. Currently, we buy at wholesale, which is significantly less. Mr. Angel stepped through an analysis of energy use in the district. The analysis showed that using boilers to preheat Memorial for heat exchange optimization has been shown not to be effective, so we're reverting back to not doing that. The fiscal condition of the district, the towns of Newton and Kingston are current. Fremont had just made their Q3 payment, and Mr. Angel projects that we will meet the projected revenues by year end. For the change in encumbrance, Mr. Angel reviewed the PO history of the year, which gives the value of all POs in the open amounts on each PO. For revenues and expenses, non-health expenditures, year to date was 22.164 million, encumbrances 6.8 million, remaining unencumbered was 1,377 million. Health expenditures year to date was 3.29, encumbrances were 1.04, remaining unencumbered was 590,000. The reserve funds were reviewed. There was no change in 3 of the funds because they're getting those reports quarterly now, and we had reviewed them prior to the next quarter coming. Special Education Trust 241,217, Capital Improvement and Maintenance Fund 273,078, Unanticipated Educational Expense 200,228. And Facilities Use Revolving Fund, which did change by 12,000, was 248,327, an increase of 12,000. Energy Trust Fund will be funded after July 1st when the fiscal year closes. Mr. Angel noted the following approved items from the prior board meetings have yet to be accounted for into the funds. Teachers' laptops for 50.7 thousand, student iPads for 6.2 thousand, and Chromebooks for 54.5 thousand. Overall total, including the 545,000 contingency fund, is $1,507,864. Chase Field review, Mr. Angel reviewed that the quote was 22,000, the actual was 24,220. The difference was an additional approval proceeding to ensure timing for the start of the season, that the fields would be available. That was approved. Contingency withholding of 2.5%. He'll be proposing that of 537,817. Year-end projections of unexpended funds. Current projection is still between 800,000 and $1 million, even though it actually is currently calculating at 1.2 million at that point in time. Mr. Angel is still working on cleaning up POs where no additional deliveries are expected or needed. They'll be scrubbing this after the end of school. There was one budget adjustment needed to address a special education IEP requirement. That's shifting within the special education accounts for a total of $46,251, all within different line items of the special education accounts. Motion was made by Ms. Bashaw to approve, seconded by Mr. Edelman, and unanimously approved. Mr. Angel noted there's a $36,820 for pump replacement at for the Bakey sewer line, which will be brought to the board. He also will need a sewer line, a liner for the sewer line at Bakey for $59,750 to avoid having to jackhammer the line out. Mr. Edelman asked about the warranties on that. This will also be brought to the board for the next meeting, those 2 items. Mr. Angel reviewed the financial statements, the audit of the financial statements. They were found that we are in compliance with generally accepted financial standards. There's 2 sets of numbers that they review. One is accrual basis, which is primarily used by bond investors and other investors that want to see it in this traditional I'll call it corporate format for lack of a better term, and the fund basis, which is what we review on a regular monthly basis. He also reviewed the management letter, the highlighted areas for improvement for the district. This is something we'd asked for from the auditors a number of times, and they finally provided this to us. They highlighted 3 areas for target for improvements: tighten the controls of student activity funds, credit cards in a couple of instances lack supporting documentation, so just tighten that up, and payroll documentations to make sure that there's proper documentation for special assignments. Mr. Angel reviewed the project management tracking tool, track spending across different funds, so we know exactly what a project is spending. It's $2,340 to purchase. The annual maintenance is $1,428, and the implementation cost is $1,260. And the committee thought that that was worth doing and having that available for the district. And that's what I have.
Great, thank you. Any other committee reports?
Facilities hasn't met since the last report. Next meeting's August 17.
17. All right, thank you.
But you met tonight, right?
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
right, but I don't have a report.
Right, no
Okay.
report.
Yeah, thank you. That's right. We did meet tonight.
I was like, well, I guess we didn't just meet,
We
but
made great-
I wasn't gonna say anything.
I'll give you a brief report.
I knew what he meant. So I was just like,
Yeah, we made great progress on the CIP tonight, so that's the report.
I do have official minutes, but I reviewed them at the last meeting. All of the policies that we spoke at the last policy meeting, we've already approved, so.
Perfect. Great. All right.
Typos in mine I have to fix.
Oh, man.
Uh-oh.
Shame, shame, shame. All right, if there are no others, we'll move on to our new student council representative, JJ.
Hi. All of us students are really excited that it's summer break finally. It was a tough year coming back and adjusting back from our COVID year to now we are here. So we're all excited about that. The only big thing that I have is student council is starting our planning of homecoming. I'm not sure if Jocelyn told you a couple meetings ago or not, but the incoming seniors are going to be, the overall theme is biomes, and the grade level themes are for seniors jungle, for juniors ocean, for the incoming sophomores it's tundra, and then the incoming freshmen have not yet decided.
AJ, I have one question.
Yeah.
Where can we get those hats? Because I think everyone here wants one. That is a cool hat.
This hat is from the Sanborn Babe Ruth baseball, so it's a rec league that is run through Sanborn.
Uh-oh. So
Like our
who do we
logo?
have to call?
I was gonna say, you might have an.
Like our logo, don't we?
Oh, is that Heather? Oh, yeah. All right. I like the logo. I like the hat. Great, you want one, right? That's a pretty cool hat.
I agree. It's pretty.
All right. I'll be in touch. We'll figure it out.
So we have to start a school board team to get a hat, or?
God help us.
You don't want me to play baseball.
I will be the team manager. How's that?
I'll be the bat boy.
Sanborn
I'm the
is
water boy.
softball, I'm sure.
I'll play first base.
All right, Jim. Mora's pitching.
Okay, oh, hold on here, people. All right, so we are gonna go to our first public comment. So I know that there was a question, not at our last meeting, but the meeting before, about what could and couldn't be, discussed, talked about at the podium. I did reach out to our school attorney for clarification. I have a statement that he helped prepare just for clarification moving forward, so that now I'm clear, and hopefully everybody will be clear, so that we know what we can and can't allow, which I think is important to know. So dear members of the community, thank you for being here tonight. I'm starting the meeting with a brief statement regarding the parameters of the school board meeting and the public comment period. Out of respect for each other, we strive to keep our meetings efficient and productive. At the same time, we value the viewpoints of the public and need to hear from our community. To strike the right balance, the school board adopted policy BEDH, which governs our public comment periods. The school board strives to comply with the school board policy BEDH at all of its meetings and expects all participants here to do the same. Under school board policy BEDH, I feel like that's just saying it way too many times, but the board does not conduct hearings or consider complaints with the general public regarding the individual employees. School board policy BED provides that any complaint or comment presented about school personnel, employees, students, or administration during any part of a meeting is out of order and will be immediately referred back to the superintendent. Per school board policy KEB, the board will not hear a review or complaint until such complaints have first been brought forth through the appropriate and applicable administrative procedures and the superintendent or his or her designee has had a reasonable opportunity to seek to resolve the complaint. Likewise, specific complaints alleging an infraction of district policy, state or federal law or regulation regarding the superintendent are also processed in accordance with policy KEB. Therefore, if you have a complaint about any employee, please put it in writing and follow the process in policy KEB. We do want to be clear, as a school board, all legitimate allegations of violation of district policy or state or federal law or regulation are taken very seriously, but we must insist on conformance with the process in policy KEB as the means of addressing these legitimate complaints. That process involves submitting a complaint in accordance with policy KEB. So the long and the short, we can't talk about specific people at the podium, but we can, I guess I think she was going to talk about, she was going to say, ask about exit interviews. That would have been okay. So that's where the clarification is there. So now we all know, and hopefully it'll be easier moving forward.
Provided that exit interviews were on the agenda.
Right. That's true.
That's important to remember.
Yes. Good point.
Question.
Good point.
It does still need to.
It does still have to be
On
on
the
the
agenda.
agenda. Yes, you're right.
And resignations and
Is-
nominations
Is not
are not,
exit interviews.
right,
Huh.
but those aren't something we discuss. Those are
Right.
just notifications.
Right.
Right.
Is that correct?
Yeah, those are not really
Okay.
deliberations. Yep.
Okay.
And
So,
So, and if the community wants certain things on the agenda, they can email the superintendent and the chair.
they can email the chair and make a recommendation.
Okay.
But it
Review.
doesn't mean that it's going to happen. And that's the thing that people need to understand is that KEB is the process for complaints, not the school board agenda.
Okay, so back to my normal spiel that I give before public comment. If you'd like to speak, please come to the podium, state your first and last name, the town you're from, and you have 3 minutes to speak. Well, that was overwhelming. We had a lot of people. All right. Okay, so we will move on then. All right, so we have a lot of Matt here moving
Yes.
forward.
It's the Matt agenda
The end of the
tonight.
year.
It is the Matt agenda here.
Yes.
Um,
Budget adjustments. You ready? Okay. So at this time of the year, I bring forward a request to transfer appropriations for several initiatives. Okay. And these are going to be line item transfers between appropriations within our budget. Now we have a school board policy that allows me to transfer up to $10,000. Beyond that, I have to ask for finance committee approval. If I have to transfer funds between special education and then any other line item, I need the full school board approval. Here, I'm transferring money in and out of special education to get some of these initiatives done, okay? What I've done is I've attached a complete list of all the accounts that I was adjusting. And on my staff report, I put in some items in here of significance. And I'm just gonna run down a quick list of them. So the first one is we spent $63,947 more than what we expected on substitutes. Who knew when we built the budget that COVID was going to happen?
Or that it was going to be as bad as it was this year. We thought things were getting better.
Yeah, exactly.
Frankly, November through January were not better. Even May.
$10,300 for a temporary special education director. $21,545 for the SRO at Memorial. Now, when we built the budget, that wasn't anticipated at the time. And we have a contract where we're splitting half the cost of the SRO between this school district and SLC. $4,500 for an actuarial evaluation that's required for our financial statement reporting. Special education legal for $29,398. We have a crack in the sewer line at Bakey. It's going to cost $59,750 to repair. We also had an inspection of our athletic equipment, and we found out that some of the items they have a timestamp on them, and when they exceed that timestamp, we either have to replace them or repair them. And so
Replace
that's
or repair or replace or remove?
or repair. So like if they repair it, they can update the timestamp on it.
Okay,
Okay, but there's some items in there that need to be replaced.
okay.
Okay, that is $11,825. We had a couple pumps over at Bakey. These are pumps that are in the septic tank, and we want to replace them with submersible pumps. $38,263. We want to update the guidance office here in the middle school. Currently, the middle school doesn't have one, so we're taking over 2 classroom spaces. $97,200. We voted previously at a school board meeting to put a pavement area out here for a small basketball court, $12,981. And that's the actual quote that we got. The running track surface, which is on the agenda item at a later time tonight, $133,950. And then auditorium upgrades, $241,973. I believe 2 meetings ago, the school board approved a math curriculum. We had to put the order in right away because we don't think we're going to have the curriculum here in time for the start of school if we didn't do it immediately. So that's $101,404. Now, there's some line items that I can use as sources, and there's just 2 big notable ones. The other ones were very small. The first one is transportation for special education, homeless, and co-curricular. What you'll find this year is like co-curricular, we didn't do that many student trips at the end of school. We didn't send our kids off to go to like the science museum or stuff like that. We didn't have any homeless students this year that we had to transport. And the special education transportation we didn't spend the entire appropriation. Now for diesel fuel, again, we didn't have co-curricular. Those are like the student transports that we're doing. And so we can take $20,000 out of diesel fuel. So I'm recommending that the school board approve all the line item transfers that I have below.
I have a question. Can we approve all this, including the running track and auditorium, since we haven't approved those as boards yet?
Yeah, that was going
I
to
was
be
gonna
my
say,
statement.
I was asking
I
the
would-
same
I would-
question.
I would motion, if it's acceptable to people, that we approve the line item changes excluding those 2 items.
Until we.
And
vote.
then we'll review those 2 items at their time, and then we can either approve or not approve those items.
I think that's just fine.
That's
Okay.
perfect.
So I make a motion to approve all items except the running track and the auditorium upgrades.
Second.
Any further discussion?
Yes, I just wanted to mention that I thought it was funny to see Tom's big 3 on there. That was an informal joke and it's taken on a life of its own.
It has.
I just want, maybe I get a big 3 every year. Oh,
Don't push it.
Oh, okay. All right. All right. When you see an opening, don't.
Just one other thing, Matt, on the list, the Bakey submersible pumps.
Yep.
It says to replace the 2 pumps in the septic system. Didn't they fail? Didn't one fail? Or
One of them failed.
Okay, I think it's
Okay.
important to make sure that that's in there.
Yeah, so what we're doing is they're both of the same age, okay? And we want to replace both pumps. And so that that amount of money is just to replace both pumps. Right now, you have to climb down into the tank and replace the pump. And what we want to do is replace it with a submersible pump that you can just pull up, in like 20 years when they fail again, we can do it from outside of the tank.
I wouldn't want that job.
Sorry?
I wouldn't want that job climbing into a tank.
Oh. You have to have special certification to do it.
All right, any further discussion? All in favor?
All right, thank you.
Unanimous? All right. Contingency. fund.
All right, I gotta pull it up. All right, so every year, let's back up. Many years ago, the district meeting, the voters approved or allowed the school board to set aside 2.5% of the net assessment into what's called the contingency fund. This has to be voted on every single year. If the school board doesn't vote on it, it automatically closes out and gets returned to the taxpayers. Last year, it was 545,000 Okay. And what I'm recommending is $537,817. Now, the net assessment is your local, if you look at your tax bill is broken up between the state share of education and the local share of education. This is the total of the local share of education across Kingston and Newton. All right. And it comes up to $21,512,703. We're taking 2.5% of that. So these funds can only be used for an emergency when the school board has a public hearing, and then they can spend up to that $537,000. I know Jamie's going to have a question.
No, I think, well, it's important for everyone to understand that the 500 and some odd thousand that from the year before goes back to taxpayers this year. This amount is held for 1 year and is only used in extreme emergencies and then goes back to them at that point. It just slows down the rate of return. It also helps to equalize the ups and downs in the tax rate for the district. So it provides two things. It provides the district with protection in the event of a catastrophic emergency, and it provides the community with a more equalized tax rate. You don't want it to go way up or down every year, because if you have a big return 1 year, people forget that the year before they got back less, or the next year when it goes back up, they think, oh, my bill went way up, but they forgot it went down the year before. You want to try to keep things level for everybody so it's not moving way up or down.
Jim?
I understand the rationale for this, and I've supported it in the past. This year, with all of the requests that the school has made of the taxpayers and the towns, on the average house in December, the taxes are going to go up $1,000. At the same time, when you add up all of the costs for each of the items and determine the mill rate. We've also got record inflation. I think now is the time to be very, very conservative about the money we ask to be withheld from the taxpayers. We also have $1.5 million in our reserves funds, which we've intentionally been building up for situations like this if we have an emergency. So again, I think this is a time to be very cautious and very considerate and very concerned about withholding $537,000 that would otherwise go back to the taxpayers.
Can I give a little update on that? Okay, so the $1.5 million that Jim spoke about includes the contingency fund that we're currently holding. Okay, if we vote up to
Right. Sorry about that. So
537,000,
it's $1 million something.
right?
Million.
Yeah, so it's $1 million. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Thank you.
So this doesn't increase the amount that we're holding or setting aside. Okay. Now, also to be clear, the school board can choose an amount less than 537,000. In years past, it has.
I had a question. How much is it for if they didn't withhold the 500? Just to get context, what would it affect on a $300,000 home? Do you have any idea what the amount of money would be that it would change the tax bill? Like, what's the?
I think every 100,000 is like 7 cents to. It's like 7 cents to Kingston and 8 cents to Newton. That's a number that I know during the budget cycle. So if you were to make this say 400,000, we'd be returning 145,000.
So it'd be a few dollars to each house that it would make a difference in their
Yes.
tax bill.
Right.
But it makes a difference to the district if we get into a bind.
Yeah, exactly. So if say we set aside 400,000, that means our reserves that we have for the district would be $1.4 million.
Mhm.
Okay. And we do have 2 items on the agenda tonight where I'm going to ask the school board to dip into those reserves.
Yeah, I mean, I had similar thoughts to Jim. I mean, we use this to some extent to balance the tax burdens and to make the swings not so wild. And we're looking at a big swing up. So I had some concerns about holding it all. To Matt's point, I mean, in my mind, do we have a non-public tonight?
We do.
I would like to know what some of these details are of what some of these other needs are. They can't be talked about in public before I'd want to say that we're going to withhold all this versus turning some of it back. Because I do think there's a big increase coming, and one of the reasons we withhold is to try to balance off that increase. But I don't know what I don't know about. We're going to talk about later on.
Can I give it a little update to what he's saying? Even though, say, for example, we set aside money tonight, the school board can decide before we set the tax rate to release some of this to reduce the tax rate.
As long as we remember to do it early enough, because one year it got just too late. They set the rate.
That's right.
So we want to make sure to do that at the first meeting in September, not slip right, because once we get into
Yeah,
October.
there was one instance where we didn't get.
It was very close. The state moved quickly. I'm just saying that if we decide to hold on this, it needs to be done by the end of September. I don't want to, he's letting you know where we're at, right?
At the latest,
At the latest, second meeting in September.
but it could be done sooner than that.
It could be. You could do it tonight.
Or
You could do
August
it in August.
17th
Yeah,
or,
absolutely. Yep. Yeah, maybe we need to just think about it, but I do think that it's important to recognize that this is a balancing act.
So this doesn't have to be completed before the end of the fiscal year?
It does not.
Okay, thank you.
Has to be done before the tax rate is set.
Okay.
I prefer to have it done before the end of the fiscal year because it makes it more clear to the auditors. But I have seen schools do it after the end of the fiscal year and it'd be okay.
Or
we're kicking the can on a lot of things, in my opinion. I think we should just do this rather than, we got so much stuff on this agenda. I'm concerned with inflation that we're going to have budget problems next year. And I just see expenses coming. So I just would rather not kick the can. So I'm going to make a motion to approve.
I'll second it.
okay. Any further discussion?
Yeah, but just so I'm clear, what was the number that would be returned estimated to the taxpayer on the 500,000? Was it $1 or something?
Sorry, what was the dollar amount that you were saying?
I don't, you.
tax impact.
You
of
said the tax impact that would go back to the taxpayer if we returned the money.
I said for like 100,000, if you were to return 100,000, it'd be like 6 cents to Kingston and no, 7 cents. I have it
7 cents
backwards.
to
6 cents to Kingston and 7 cents to Newton.
7 cents to Newton or 6?
All right. I'll have to, let me run the number right now.
You said it was about 150 a year.
Don't quote me on that. I'm not good enough with the
Yeah,
math.
there's some numbers
Just
thrown
kind
out.
of
So
putting
I think-
into-
I just want to clarify.
Yeah,
those
Right.
yeah.
Before we do anything else. I think we have enough time and probably take a couple minutes.
So on a $350,000 house, 7 cents would be $24.50.
So as
Not,
homeowner,
not a big, big.
yeah, as a homeowner, I'm okay with $24.
Yeah, okay.
To your point, Maura,
Right.
I think there's a lot of things that we're going to have to question going into this next year.
Mhm.
I agree.
Although we're all feeling that hit, the school's going to feel that hit as well, and we're going to have to make some adjustments along the way.
Well, oil and electricity are really concerning and we do have some contingencies, but I would agree that withholding is a smart thing to do. It's not popular. I don't love it, but it does go back to the taxpayers if we don't use it eventually.
Matt,
Okay, so if you released $100,000, it would be 6 cents to Kingston, 7 cents to Newton.
So Jim, you said that was $28 for a $350,000.
2450 for a $350,000 house in Newton.
It's good to know before you decide.
Yeah, and I agree completely. I mean, there are just so many unknowns right now. We need to make sure that we have funding if there's an emergency. I mean, it's important because if we're trying to make sure things stay level, we don't want to return all this money and then say, oops, we need more, and then try to pull it back. That's,
You have to get loans. It's
that,
bad.
yeah, that's really tough.
Really
So
bad.
I'd rather err on the side of caution.
you can't unwind a clock.
Exactly. So I'd rather err on the side of caution.
I have a question for Matt. Theoretically, if we approve this, could we reverse that in the same August, September timeframe?
Yes.
So depending on what we learn in the future, that'd be a possibility. I don't think there's a votes to do it, but I just want to understand that that's a possibility.
I think you probably should recommend to make it an agenda item to revisit in September.
All right, if there's no further discussion, all in favor? All right, unanimous. Okay, thank you. $500 donation.
Yeah. All right, we got a $500 donation from ExxonMobil. And it is going to be used. This is the Global Partners Limited Partnership, which is an ExxonMobil Education Alliance program. And the funds are going to be used for science, technology, engineering, and mathematics or STEM programs.
Does this require a vote because it's below $5,000, or is it just public notice that we received it and saying thank you?
Every donation has to be approved by the school board.
Okay, thank you.
Anything over 5,000 requires a public hearing.
I was gonna say, it's not, this isn't a public hearing.
Thank you. I knew the 5,000 triggered a public hearing, but I wasn't sure.
I move to approve that.
Second.
Any discussion?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks,
so
Dave.
just
Thank
Thank you
you.
very, very much. Greatly appreciated. I know our kids will appreciate it. All in favor? Unanimous.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Don't tell Jim Enright, he might want to put it to the sub.
I asked, I was thinking.
You were thinking that, weren't you?
Oh, all right.
Not that that's a bad thing, but you know.
Authorizations.
I just need authorization to hire over the summer. Normally, the board gives me authorization to hire employees so that we don't lose candidates.
So is this authorization to hire replacement positions? Okay,
Yeah.
not new positions.
No, we don't create positions usually without running them by the board unless there's some kind of weird thing, but it's very rare. Like tonight, you'll see on the agenda, the addition of 3 positions. That's the normal process.
And we'll approve that and therefore, well, I should say.
If you approve that, then we'll hire.
But we don't need to come back and authorize.
You don't. That's exactly it. More, I'm trying to wrap it up so we don't see you till August 17th. That's the goal.
Like you're thinking.
Yep.
Make a motion to approve the superintendent of authorization to hire over the summer.
Thank you.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Unanimous. All right, next one. Authorize superintendent to issue long-term suspensions over the summer.
Again, if something weird happens,
Is it with students?
this is just a technicality. We do have summer programs in the district, and if there is something bizarre,
I was
that
wondering.
happens, I'd have to-
Yeah, okay.
Just approving it so that I'm covered.
I thought you were going to suspend people's summer vacation.
I'll talk to JJ. We'll figure it out.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion?
So, yeah, suspension's not expulsion.
It's just, I cannot do expulsions without a board hearing.
Okay.
You good?
I'm all set.
Okay, all right, all in favor?
Thank you.
Unanimous. Authorize business administrator to pay bills and payroll over the summer.
Move to approve.
Second.
All right, any discussion? All right, all in favor? Unanimous, great, thank you. All right, Tom, approval of updated Kingston School Resource Officer Agreement.
Thank you. So there have been a lot of events in the last few months that I'd prefer not to end the year thinking about. And people have asked me for a number of years as a guidance counselor, a principal, a superintendent, what I think about the best ways are to mitigate school shootings. And I will tell you, without any question, there are 2 things that I believe, in my professional opinion, mitigate school shootings. First one is the placement of a police officer armed at a public school. It's the number 1 thing that stops school shootings. You cannot make a school a prison. In order to make a school completely safe, you'd have to literally put a concrete wall around it and have a barred gate. That's not the message we want to send to our children. But the likelihood that a police officer could stop a school shooting is very high. The second thing that is really important, and ironically, not more important, but maybe more effective, is the placement of a police car in front of a school. It's kind of like having a security system at your house. The sticker that says ADT is almost more important than the alarm, because people who are going to do harm will see the sticker and say, I'll just go next door. I don't want to deal with that. So I think that it's important to note that a lot of people have reached out to you and to me about Bakey, because the memorial school has, the resource officer is located at the memorial school for the SLC. It's paid 50% by the SLC. It's a school year only position. It's 186 days. If the town chooses to pay the other days for a full year position, that's up to the town. We recently approved changing, and we had been working on this prior to this year, having the safety officer at the high school be an armed police officer. That's approved and set moving forward. I asked Mr. Angel to look into the budgeting implications of what we could do to fund a resource officer. And Matt has looked at some of the reserve funds for this year so that it would then go into the budget for next year. And we're recommending that we add a school year resource officer to the Bakey School for the safety of our students.
I'm going to be applying for a federal grant first. If not, then I'm going to be going after some facility funds, and we're going to be using the facility use revolving fund.
So we were looking at the money from the SLC that we make from renting the middle school to help pay for this until we can put it in the budget.
How much are we talking?
It is 60, wait a minute. I had that off the top of my head. I have to do my math. $68,000 per officer. That includes their salary, their uniform, and some supplies for 180 days.
Do they get benefits on top of that?
We're only paying for FICA, Medicare. No, wait a minute. Medicare, because I don't believe the police department pays for FICA, and no New Hampshire retirement and no health insurance. So 68,000 is an estimate. They haven't hired any officers into these positions yet.
So that's for 180 days?
Yes, 107 hours a day for 180 days.
School year position when students are in the Bakey School. Now, the police department might choose to make it a full year position, but we would only be responsible for the
School year.
school year.
So-
Sometimes they'll.
We're paying half of it?
No,
we're
that's
paying
what
all
you're
of it.
confusing. The
That's
Bakey
with
schools-
Memorial, or with the
that's
SLC, we're
Memorial.
paying
Yeah,
half.
yeah,
Right.
yeah. Don't, like, Memorial, we're paying half because the SLC is paying half, and sometimes the officer goes over there to help out.
Right.
But he's housed at the Memorial School.
Yeah.
The Bakey position is solely a district position. I just don't want the folks in the audience to get confused that are here or on the video.
So for two positions, that's 136,000.
That's correct.
So one for Bakey, one for Memorial?
No,
No, that's not correct.
No. One-
Memorial's all taken care of.
Okay.
It's being paid for, it's done. The high school is being paid for we're using the funds from the student resource officer that is not an armed police officer. At the end of next year, that position will go away and the police officer is being paid for by those funds.
Okay.
We're asking you for the $68,000 for Bakey. I don't want to muddy the water.
So what's the other position then? You said two.
No, we only,
That's putting the two together. The two officers from Kingston, one of them we've already covered the cost of.
Okay.
So they're only asking for the other one.
Okay.
To fund the other one.
we're asking, we've already taken care of the high school and Memorial. We want to talk about Bakey.
So the
Yeah,
contract
Bakey's
is for the two, but we've already covered one of them. We've already covered
Bakey's
one.
the only uncovered campus. in
Yes.
Yes, sir.
district
Right.
now.
That is correct.
And to Mr. Ambrose's comments, there's no guarantee. And you can't harden these like a missile silo. I mean, but I do think that it makes sense to have armed presence on site. The risk is very small, but it's a risk quite clearly. The people sitting in involved, they didn't think there was a particular risk to them either. And it's not a panacea because in two of the big ones in Florida
Mhm.
and in Texas,
Parkland,
there were officers involved and it didn't prevent it.
Yep.
But I'm cheap. I don't like spending money. But this one makes sense to me.
Thank you, Jamie.
Thank you, Jamie.
Rick?
Will the officer be doing the traffic as well? So the principal and the teacher?
Yeah, we'll assign the traffic to them for sure. That would be
Mhm.
great. The principal needs to do other things.
And the teachers.
And the teachers and our custodians, all of them, our staff.
Heather?
I just want to say thank you. This is really important to me as a parent of a child at Beakey School, but also as a community member, and knowing that, as Jamie said, it's not going to solve all the issues, but it's going to make our teachers and our kids feel a little safer going to school every day, and the
Absolutely.
parents.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I echo that. And it's also really nice for the students to make that connection with an officer at a young age,
Yes.
because they build trust. And that's really important for down the road. If there's something going on, they've gotten to know someone that they've trusted. And so hopefully that will build trust with, anything in the future that goes on. So I think it's really important. And I know that my daughter's at Memorial and she loves the SRO over there.
He is great.
He's really great with the kids.
He
So,
is.
so I'm 100% on board for this. So,
I'll make a motion to approve.
Thank you, Rick.
thank you.
Second,
Thank you.
Right. All in favor? Unanimous.
Thank you, everyone.
Great.
By the way, I really appreciate the unanimous support. That really sends a message to the community that safety is a priority. Thank you.
All right. Tom, I know you have staffing here
Mhm.
next.
Mhm.
I don't know if everybody knows the whys behind,
Yeah,
the
I
first
can-
one can, I think the first one, I think that one's okay, but the second one, I don't know if we need to have a little more discussion about that.
Yeah,
before
we can totally do that. That's perfectly fine. So the first position, let's talk about that.
Okay.
It's doesn't matter if we're in public or non-public.
Exactly.
And then we can do the rest of the agenda and then we can go to non-public and figure out the other two things. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So, first grade has 104 students in it and it's 21 in a class, and the staff, I met with all the teachers in the district over the last 5 days. I've spent 5 straight days all day long listening. I learned a lot. And the first thing I learned is that first grade has too many students.
Mhm.
There's 21 in a class. I'm recommending that we ask for contingency money for when classes bubble up when we don't expect it to, and it happened. So this is why we have it. So we're asking you to authorize us to use the funds if we need them. We'll obviously work, we have staff attrition, so we always work within our current budget. But if we need to use the balance of the unanticipated expense trust fund, I don't want to have to call you back mid-June and have you meet about it. So the purpose of today is to get authorization to do this if we need to, but only if we don't have enough money once the dust settles.
so if we hire another first grade teacher, how many kids per class would that?
16.
16, okay.
Right in the perfect sweet spot. And with what we're seeing in kindergarten, our kindergarten teachers, bless them,
Yes.
we're using some ESSER money to put a couple of paras just in kindergarten, and they are going to be untouchable.
It's a great.
So Mrs. Manning and her team were really, really articulate about what the needs are. Not a problem. So we're lucky we have the ESSER funds. See, this is where not spending it in the beginning when everyone is paying off. I felt like the pandemic is like a tsunami. It came up slow, it hit us hard, and then it had a lot of water, and now the water's coming down and we're seeing the damage under the water. So I've saved money to support our students once we saw and could assess what the real problems are. And kindergarten is one of the spots that I'm looking at. And I think that that isn't really necessarily like a board thing, but I want you to know that I'm allocating money from these grants to offset learning loss, working with Mr. Rocher and Mr. Kennett to help the Beakey School.
How many kids are we anticipating for kindergarten?
He's at about 16 a class right now. He's doing great. I checked on those numbers because I had a feeling someone would ask. Yeah, but we're watching it. It's early.
Will there still be 5 kindergarten?
I think so, but don't quote me on
Okay.
that. I mostly focused on first grade because it had bubbled to 20.
Yeah.
I asked the class size. Yeah.
That is a very high class size for first grade.
It is too high. Especially for first. It's the hardest year.
I make a motion to approve the withdrawal of grade 1 teacher salary from unanticipated expense trust fund.
Second.
Discussion? Jamie?
So this is the first that I'm seeing the need or hearing the need, so I don't fully understand what the needs are. I ran some numbers as to what the projected student counts are. I reviewed those with Mr. Ambrose just before the meeting. It looks like there's about 24 net reduction of students in the district. Not in the Bakey area, but there's some in Memorial, some in the middle school, some in the high school, primarily in the high school. I appreciate the statement that we'll look at other opportunities. I just don't have enough information to vote to deplete the reserves at this point in time. I need more time to understand the phone drivers here and what can and can't be done.
Throwing some numbers.
Yeah.
So right now, the fund has $200,228. We're anticipating the cost to be $97,117, and we're only asking up to that amount. So if we spend less than that, we're only going to withdraw less. But if we were to withdraw the full amount, it would leave $103,111 in the fund.
And my concern is, and I don't know the information on the other one either, we'll deal with that after, but the request on the special education is an 80% reduction of reserves. This request is a 50% reduction. So just, it's concerning to me to vote to do that without having full knowledge of the drivers.
The driver is the number of students in first grade. There's 104 students.
And there's options to do other things also that I don't understand what could or couldn't be done there without fully understanding that.
Right. So we can have that conversation, Jamie. I'm happy to discuss it. Mr. Fitzpatrick's correct. Overall, the district has lowered in numbers by about 24 students. But when you take 24 students out of grades 7 through 12, that doesn't mean that you have a teacher to remove. There could be 2 in one grade, 5 in the next, 6 in the next, 4 in the next. I am not recommending reducing staff at the high school level and firing a teacher that's already hired for next year to cover a need at the Bakey school that we're probably going to be able to cover through funds for attrition. The likelihood that we're going to use the reserve is very low, but we didn't want to call you back in June and ask you for it. Or July, I mean.
So June's about done.
Yeah. Thanks, Jamie. But to be transparent, look, slippage of 25 to 40 people across the 1,600 or 1450, I think we're at now. Started out at 16 something when I started here. But when you have 1,450 people in an organization in groups of 100, and you lose 2 or 3 from every level for 12 levels, that's 28 people. It doesn't do a thing to whether or not you can cut staff from those levels. Do I think the high school is going down in numbers? I can tell you for sure that by 2 years from now, the high school will be below 500 students. And the principal will be tasked with creating a budget and giving us feedback about what his staffing needs are. But the guy isn't even through the door yet. I'm not going to cut his staff in June and then say, hey, here you are. Because we had a 20 student change in a school of 525 students. That doesn't make any sense. So my recommendation is that you approve us to use the funds if we have to, or we can just spend the money and come back to you in August and say that we have to, but it doesn't make any sense. I can't wait until August to hire a first grade teacher. I need to post it today. The market is tight. So that's all I'm saying is I've got to get staff. And I can tell you right now that the number one problem in our public schools right now with the culture is staffing. Bakey has a staffing shortage. No, it's not popular. I know people don't like it, but I wouldn't be a good leader if I sit down with groups of people in groups of 5 or 6 and listen to them for 5 straight days and have them tell me that staffing shortages is a problem and then sit here and tell you that it's not. It is. It is. And it's serious. And we'll talk about more in non-public about a couple of things, but I want you to know that we have to help these kids. And I'm not going to back down about this. It is a crisis. And when Rick says that there's a toxic culture at Bakey, it is linked to these problems.
Rick?
So you've discussed this with the principal
Mhm.
that I believe I wasn't on the board, but the board approved the hire, correct?
Mhm.
and between you and the principal who are responsible for running the school and the budget, this is your recommendation?
This is one of the recommendations.
Okay.
One of many.
Thanks.
Any further discussion? All in favor? So Maura, Heather, Rick, and myself. All opposed? Jim, Jamie. All right,
Thank you.
thank you.
So we can go on to the grading and the other things now. don't we?
Yeah. I
And we'll
think-
talk about
yeah,
the other
we'll-
one.
we'll- If the board doesn't object, we'll move 7.6.2 until after we can discuss
And
some
non-public.
things in
Okay.
non-public.
Um,
Okay.
I was just looking back to the item earlier in the agenda. It was the running track and the auditorium that we waited on.
Oh, yes.
I
Do
just
we
don't
wanna
want to forget to
do-
motion those correctly. Can we
Do
do
we
those?
want to do, yeah, let's do those first.
Okay.
No one is opposed to that. We'll move those up and we'll get those done, discussed. Okay, so Matt, do you want to talk about the running track?
Sure. We have contacted 7 companies from here all the way down to Texas. And we only received 2 different proposals. The last time I presented this, Maine Tennis and Track had a different proposal. The problem with that proposal was that it had a contingency in it. If the price of materials or supplies went up, then their price would go up as well. And I needed a fixed price because if it went up above the amount that was authorized by the school board, I would not be able to move forward with the project. So Maine Tennis and Track came back with a proposal for $133,950. And they're going to be able to get this done by late summer 2020. And they're going to have a 2-year warranty period.
2022.
I'm sorry, 2022. There is a difference between the depth of the 2 different proposals, and the depth of the material is the difference is a half an inch. Maine Tennis and Track, the depth of their material is 4 inches. And on Cape and Islands, theirs is 4.5 inches. Now, the major thing about the problem about Cape and Island is their start date would be summer of 2023. So the fiscal impact for this would be $133,950, which would be funded through those budget transfers. And I have Mr. Doyle here if we want to ask questions about that proposal as well.
What's the status on the warranty on this? I think that you had told me at one point in time, that Main Track moved up to 2.
They're both.
Yeah, they're 2 years.
So that originally was 0.
Yes.
warranty, Then 1-year warranty, now
Now
it's
it's
2-year
2.
warranty.
Yes,
Correct?
that's correct.
Good job,
Good
you
job.
guys, for pushing on that. That was
Yeah.
great, right? You helped.
They also removed the contingency to charge more. That was on the last proposal.
What is the, to me, there's 2 things. What is the offset of the half inch? What's I don't know if this is a question for Dan, but what's the importance of that half inch, right? The one, am I reading this right? That if we wait until next summer to do it, we can get an extra half an inch for
So it's not actually
essentially the
half an
same price?
inch. It's not, I don't think it's a half an inch. It actually says in here, it's pounds per square yard.
I'm sorry, yeah.
So it's not,
I'm sorry.
it's not
I
inches, yeah.
misspoke. You're right.
Yeah.
So they're using 4 pounds per square yard, Maine Tennis and Track, 4.5 pounds per square yard for Cape and Island. So the material density is thicker for Cape and Island.
what is that?
what does that equate to?
I was wondering the same thing.
Okay.
Yeah,
It's
I was
just,
wondering the same.
it's
Is
how they
is it worth
apply
wait?
it.
I guess what I'm asking is it worth waiting another year because that is important, or is it not that important?
I don't think it's going to be that important.
Dan, is your,
Dan, do you?
I know we had asked this before. We have to provide a dumpster. Did we look into that and figuring out if we were going to have issues?
We have dumpsters on site
But did
already.
we asked to look into if we would have an issue disposing of this type of product in our dumpster? Because I know some dumpster companies are very specific about what is allowed in them, and they're being charges if you dump stuff that is not allowed. So,
I'm not aware of any dumpster issues. I thought
Oh,
No, this one specifically says, owner to provide clean, adequate water source and dumpster for disposal of job associated with waste and debris. So we had, I think the last time we talked about this,
I think they're referring to just general waste though.
okay.
I think they're referring to the track that they-
Okay, that's what I think that's what we were trying to clarify last time, because we didn't want to end up throwing stuff in our dumpsters that was gonna cause us issues and get us extra fees. So,
Yeah, the other Cape and Island say nothing about providing water dumpster.
right. I did notice that as well. That's why I was asking for clarification.
Can we potentially approve the motion contingent upon the dumpster not being an issue? Is that,
I mean, I think the cost is the cost. Because we're providing the dumpster, I think we just need to make sure that if we're going to be putting whatever we're going to be putting in our dumpsters, we're not going to create an issue with our dumpster company. So, and we can discuss that if we need to after, but this, I mean, this,
It's basically just general waste.
Okay. okay,
So we're not talking about digging up the existing track and putting a new track. This is a resurfacing of what's there.
Okay.
What they'll do is they'll scrape a small layer off of it.
Right.
Scrub the surface basically, so the new surface is here.
Yep.
Do you know what the composition of that surface is?
Latex.
Latex. Okay.
And then the water is for what they usually spray the track down to look for puddles in the track, and then they fill those puddles, so you have a completely level track. So they're not consuming a lot of water, they're just watering it down. So you
Right.
water for the puddles.
So when you look at paint, dried latex is not considered a hazardous waste.
No.
You got it. It's not-
Right.
Okay.
dried most anything is not considered hazardous. Okay,
and main tenants and track, put the original track in, correct?
That's correct.
yes.
And they can start it this summer.
They can do it late summer.
And will it be ready for the school year?
It'll be,
Pretty close?
It'll be pretty close.
it's going to be tough, but we're going to get it done.
Well, we start with cross-country, don't
Right.
we?
We start with cross
So
country. anyway.
we should
we'll
be,
be
I
okay.
You
if
talked
it
to
goes
Bob,
into the
right?
fall.
I asked Matt to talk to Bob and I haven't checked in.
was going to say,
No.
yeah, we don't need it
It'll
until
be fine.
spring. I mean, technically,
Yeah.
spring track
Well, the
is when-
football field. You gotta walk,
football field.
you gotta go
yeah.
over the track to get to football.
Right,
so-
yeah.
Yeah, it'll be fine.
Okay.
I'm thinking using it, not getting to the football field. Okay,
Can I make a motion to approve the main track and field or tennis and track? Oh.
Second.
We're looking for here.
yep.
Second.
Second. All right. Any further discussion?
Does
On-
that,
Mhm.
does that include the transferring the budget?
Oh, thanks for,
Oh.
please
Okay,
mend.
and
yeah.
can I make a motion to approve the main track and field quote and transfer it in the budget?
Thank you.
Okay.
Second.
All right. Any further discussion? All right. All in favor? All right. Unanimous.
Thank you.
Great. All right. Now auditorium.
All right, the auditorium, and we're going to bring up Dan and Gordon to help me with this. We have 5 different quotes, and we are going to recommend theater lights from Port Lighting and audio-visual equipment from AVI Pro. Now, they're not the low-cost bidder, but we, for Port Lighting, they are the best company in the area. And for AVI Pro, they're already in the building, so they are the best company for us for our facility because they already know everything in there. All right. And then all the quotes are all attached down below.
Can you just repeat? So theater lights will be Port Lighting, and who will do audio visual?
AVI Pro.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Now we have asked, we were asked to look at one more company for lighting. And did you want to talk about that company, Gordon?
For lighting?
No, I'm sorry, Dan. So,
Gordon's like, no.
no, I'm sorry. Because you looked at the website for that company and it had on a stadium on there.
Oh, that one. So I contacted Barbers on Lighting and talked with Sarah Wiley there. And she said due to the short turnaround, it would be months before they could even come out and take a look at the facility. And she also said, well, you're already working with Port Lighting right now, correct? And I says, yeah, they all talk. Believe me, these companies all talk. And I says, yes, we're working with Port Lighting right now. And she goes, I can't touch them as far as price goes. So she goes, I would just stick with Port Lighting and work with them. And that came right from their representative. So,
And when Gordon looked up their website,
One more thing. Yeah, with that, they apparently do the lights for Citi Field for the New York Mets. So, we're probably pretty low on their priority list. One other thing with J&A Audio and Lighting, Port Lighting was actually here when that vendor was here. So they subcontract all of their lighting to Port Lighting. So we have no quote provided there, but essentially it was going to be the same thing as what Port Lighting sent us.
So Gordon, all lights are pointing to Port Lighting,
Pretty much, yeah.
all signs. Sorry, it's just really boring. I'm trying to keep things light, dad joke. Jeez.
thank you for shedding some light on that for us.
Oh my God.
Yes.
Oh.
do you want to talk about AVI Pro and their?
Yeah, so I can talk about AVI Pro. So as Matt stated, they're already in the building. We've already started a portion of this project back in February vacation 2020, so right before we went remote. They've been in the building since I've pretty much been here. They've done all the audio equipment that we use for these meetings. And basically, they've got 3 years experience of the current infrastructure, what has been changed already, versus, some of the other companies. MFI was $1,000 cheaper, but I expect the gap of the unexpected costs to be a lot higher with MFI Pro as well, because we've had AVI Pro in here. They know the cables that were run 2 years ago. They know how everything's set up now. Their warranty is pretty good. You can do a yearly support contract, and essentially it will go up by year because of liability of the device or the equipment. But essentially, if year 3 the soundboard dies, they'll come in, they'll replace it, no cost. Other than our yearly support contract. They also provide loaner equipment. So right now we're actually using a loaner amplifier because we lost one in October of last year. So we've actually got a loaner piece of equipment in from them currently, which is also part of their annual support as well. If they can't get a board in right away, if something dies, they'll find something compatible to put in until we can get it replaced.
So this is about relighting. How is the criteria developed are we throwing out everything and starting with brand new, or we need some things to be replaced, but others are still okay or have been replaced recently? What's the scoop on all of that?
So with the lighting, we're looking at going completely LED in the lighting. The lighting that's in there now consumes a lot of energy, just because of the energy that just because they're hot lights, and with the LED lighting, they have color films that you have to put over the light to change the lighting. With LED, you can change it all internally too. So there's a convenience there.
Change it all what?
You can change it internally electronically.
Okay.
Then the other thing is that when you go with LED lighting, you need fewer of them, because when you do a stage production type show, you have a light that's blue, a light that's red, a light that's, yellow, whatever. With LED, you only need one light to cover 4 different colors. So you can reduce the number of lights that you own and maintain also when you go to LED. So that's one big thing about going to LED, plus the energy savings with using LED. There is a small market for our equipment. I was telling Matt about this, that if we go with LED lighting, we could almost try and put our old lighting on the market as used equipment and recover some of the costs that way. I don't know how much, but when we were talking with Port Lighting, they said that, hey, you know, down in Broadway in New York City, they still use conventional lighting. They don't even use LED there. And there's big production houses like that throughout the country that are still interested in purchasing used equipment like that because there really isn't a
Alternative
demand for it.
equipment for lighting.
So, so that's the plan, is to go with LED. It's a lot safer too. You got to remember that, you know, we have students that are playing with that equipment and that stuff runs very hot. And, you know, we opened ourselves up to burns and stuff like that. So
Isn't
from a
most of it
safety
mounted
standpoint,
on the ceiling?
I'm sorry.
Isn't most of it mounted on the ceiling on those racks?
Well, sure, but they have to adjust the lighting when it's on. So when you turn the lights on and they're adjusting lighting, they're touching them and moving them. So
There's a
from a
catwalk.
safety standpoint, that's another big thing too.
So the kids are climbing up into the galley and. or
Yeah, we have a
gallery and-
catwalk up there.
Mhm. Mhm.
So,
Yeah. So we're looking at getting LED lighting throughout the building. And there's potential money available to change those fixtures. Is there any money available from different sources to cover some of this cost?
I don't believe there is. I did apply for a small grant to help some of this, but I haven't heard anything back from it yet. Because this really isn't general lighting for, you know, educational purposes. This is something that's kind of beyond that. So there really isn't a whole lot of money for that as far as grant money goes. So.
That's all my questions. Thank you.
One thing I wanted to add to, from our initial, I think it was with MFI, we were going to have them quote out retrofitting the current fixtures. The problem with that is there was going to be each light needed the back piece for the bulb,
Yeah.
and then the front needed to be replaced because of, I don't know if it was the bulb size or something. So between doing that to double the amount of fixtures as LED and then the energy cost, they didn't even bother quoting out, you know, because the money wasn't, you know, a wide gap to get that done.
So I have questions. So did we even ask for quotes on retrofits, or did we just say we want new fixtures?
We did ask for quotes on
Yeah,
retrofit. We
that's
didn't
what
get
I'm-
anything, and that's what Gordon was saying, is that the cost difference between the two wasn't that great. And a lot of the fixtures we have in there can't be retrofitted anyways, like the psych lights and things like that. They can't be retrofitted, so we would have to go new anyways.
Well, you can buy a bulb that goes into the fixture. The fixture doesn't get retrofitted. It's the lamps that are retrofit lamps.
No. Everything is run off a panel system up in the balcony. There's a lot of things that it's just not changing a bulb. They have to actually take out the whole assembly inside and put new assemblies in. There's a bunch of electronics involved in those. So it's just not like a general light where you take a light bulb out and throw an LED in. It's not that way.
Depends on the fixtures. So did we, are we scoping out only color changing lights? Or do we also have just white lights?
Well, when you buy an LED light, they all come with the colors in it automatically.
No, they don't. So you can get white
Okay.
lights or you can get color changing lights. Color-
I'll answer this one. I do not recommend putting white light bulbs in the theater and then making people change gels unless it would save a significant amount of money, because the amount of time and energy that it takes to change the gels, you have to have more lamps. So for 4 colors, you have to have 4 lights, 4 bulbs.
I understand.
Okay, all right. I just wanted to make sure. Yep.
You need white lights. So buying a color changing light that requires extreme electronic controls are very different than putting in a white light that doesn't, and it
Yep.
changes the price dramatically.
Yep.
So I'm not satisfied that we've done our homework on lighting. The original quote on this was $128,163. We're anywhere from 87% to 105% over that in the new numbers. What's the difference from what we originally quoted or what we originally estimated?
When was that original quote?
It was what was given to the budget committee to present.
That 128,000 quote was done in 2019. I'm experiencing large price increases this year.
Mhm.
We're trying to do a project in this environment, which is different than the quote that was done back in 2019.
Price increases are ridiculous right now. I get them daily at my work.
100%.
You have, we get price increases anywhere from 2% to 10% monthly on different products. It's insane. And then on top of that, we also receive, oh, guess what? Your freight charges are going up and we're going to charge you a 2% surcharge on the product, on the price of your material. And it's completely out of control right now. It's absolutely, it's nuts.
Just to give an example, one of the items that we're revisiting, one of our online subscriptions has gone up 43%. And Gordon and I are talking about it right now and how to renegotiate it. So that is the pricing increases that we're facing right now.
Also, that quote was from 2016.
Okay.
Oh, well,
Then it shouldn't have been provided to the budget committee, as this is a number that we need next year. If it really was a 5-year-old number that said, well, it'll cost about this, and there's no adjustments for inflation at the time, I can't address that right. All I can say is this is what we were told, and now we want double that money. And when I ask questions, I just don't think that we've done sufficient study to warrant launching the project yet, in my opinion.
more.
So I was going to say something, although Jamie, you kind of made up a point too that I agree with you and I'll address that. But I can just tell you in my industry, I've seen price increases of 40% since the beginning of the pandemic. So since 2016, I could imagine it's even more than that. I agree with you in your point. It shouldn't have been brought to the budget committee. Then if that quote was that old, that probably wasn't great. I just kind of want to make an overall point. I feel like we're being asked to approve and spend a lot of money tonight. And I just want to make it clear, I'm aware of what we're potentially doing in the future. And I think that what we're going to have to do this year when we create the budget next year is be creative about how we do things. But I think that right now we need to be very focused on what is best for the students. And I just want to make sure that we have this money available, and we could be seeing price increases of 40% on other things. So I'm really concerned about that, but I am very well aware that we're approving a lot of money. I also want to make a point. When we did this budget, there was a lot of talk about the track, the auditorium, and
Wi-Fi.
whatever,
Yeah.
whatever or this is part 2 of big 3. It was discussed at both the school board and the budget committee that we had talked a lot that we were hoping, or some people were hoping, that these things were going to happen. So I don't think that this is coming out of left field. I do agree with you, Jamie, that the number that was thrown out was probably not an appropriate number, but I'm well aware there are things down the road that I want to be aware of when we have contracts that are in the future. And I do believe us having a stable budget has allowed us to pass a lot of contracts. So I'm aware that that is happening. And I just don't want it to be lost that I think we should just go and spend money wherever we have. But I think right now our main concern needs to be on some of these things, and whether we approve this or not, I kind of just want to make a general point about some of the things that we're approving right now of how I'm feeling on things.
I didn't really catch how you, so let me just ask you a quick question. So the auditorium is a major part of the student experience at the high school. And so I want to be clear to the public, this auditorium is for the students.
And I'm
And
not
we have
saying
waited,
that it
no,
is
I know you're
not
not, I
at
know,
all.
but I just want to be clear that we could not get people to give us bids for these things.
Mhm.
I have worked tirelessly for 4 weeks to bring you what Rick asked for. I have met with them regularly. I've kept my eye on it. I've talked to people. This issue of this auditorium is only going to go up in cost the longer we put it off.
Yeah.
It is almost 20 years old.
Yeah.
The lights in the auditorium are fine if you have a New York Stage Company budget and you want old school feeling lights because it's boutique and cool. running the lights in an auditorium, running the sound system. I won't use that auditorium right now for a presentation. I do it in here. It's a mess. And so I'm recommending that you consider that this comes out of this year's money and it's in the budget. It's not affecting the next year's budget.
And I agree with you.
And that's all I just want to
I'm just
remind
making
people
a
of.
general comment about what we're doing right now, because I feel like
Sure,
it's
I'm not pushing
line
back. I'm
after
just,
after line item. Okay, let's spend more,
Mhm.
because I hear what Jamie and Jim are saying.
And
we
I
need to
agree.
Be aware of that. And I just want to say, I am aware of that. And that is in my thinking. I just think that right now, that's not my top priority. And I'm just also raising that this was brought up. Some of these items, the track and the auditorium, were discussed during the budget process. And there were big discussions that there were hopes that when we got to this point, this is what we were going to do.
Yep. Thank you, Maura.
That's all.
Thank you.
Heather?
I just also wanted to maybe get some clarification. So if the auditorium is fixed and up and running, we can also rent it out and get revenue, correct?
Yes, but I want to be clear that the educational purposes are more important than unanticipated or I can't tell you what the revenue would be.
I agree.
You know what I mean?
No,
I
I
wish I
agree
could, I could
that the
forecast it.
auditorium is integral to our school system. We have plays and we have band and the community comes together. But I also think we can look at, we should think about the other unanticipated positive outcomes where like
Mhm.
there's other auditoriums in the area that people rent and the money goes back to the district.
And that has happened here and would happen more. It is truly 20 years old. It's out of date.
Mhm.
And that's a way we can be creative.
Yes. Yes.
And that's what I think we need to.
Yeah.
I think this year, that's what we're going to have to,
Mhm.
next year, that we're going to have to start doing those types of things.
Well, now that we're back in person, it's a lot easier. For 2 years, the auditorium and everything was closed. So
Right.
it's a lot easier to rent it out once it's up and running and solid.
Yeah, so we have been talking about this since I was on the budget committee. My notes from that time, I remember Jim, I'm quoting you, so sorry. You said, we'll continue to fund facilities, but in a realistic manner, applying monies and leftover funds. Matt, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is coming from leftover funds, correct?
That's correct.
So I attended the chorus and the band concert a couple weeks ago, week ago. I sat in the balcony. The chorus was not on the stage. The band was. Couldn't see the chorus. I mean, I could see it, but it was dim. But I can tell you what the impact that I got was I heard my son in the band, but the poor kids that were trying to sing into a microphone that didn't work it's ridiculous. So I said, when I was a board member, or I'm sorry, when I was a budget committee member, the board voted to put another grade here. So, and we're having a lot of discussions. So I make a motion to approve port lighting and AVI Pro for the auditorium.
Second.
Matt?
And approve the budget transfer.
Oh, yes, sorry. I make a motion to approve port lighting and AVI Pro and approve the budget transfer.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion?
So by budget transfer, we're talking about money that is unexpended funds that would otherwise go back to the taxpayers, like the 535,000 that we approved, or 37,000 that we approved for the contingency fund.
Yes.
Okay.
Money that is going to be spent for students, teachers, facilities.
I just think that the point that Maura was making, and I'm not against this, but I think the point that Maura was making is that we're adding on a lot of costs that are going to go back to the taxpayers. And we're kind of revisiting the way things used to be in a sense. And if we do this again next year, I could see budgets being in trouble. I could see contracts being in trouble. I'm just putting that out there.
I agree with that. And I'm completely on board with contracts are extremely important. And that is why I'm saying
Yep.
we are going to need to be creative next year because we're not going to, not even with the budget, just with inflation and whatnot. I'm very well aware. And I think that I don't want to speak for everyone on the board, but I think that that's something that is on our mind. We want to make sure we can get contracts passed.
And
So-
also, every bit of money that we add on to our cost per student is one more reason for Fremont to look somewhere else. When it comes to the high school. And we're talking about down the road, the bond's going to be paid, but we're going to have all these other expenses. I hope that's being calculated as something that's going to be part of Fremont's tuition because they're going to have to help defer that. I don't think we can get Fremont in here on the backs of Newton and Kingston. It has to be equitable.
I will only say this. Passing contracts is one of the most important things we can do. We have not made gains. We have barely kept our heads above water because 4 contracts failed before I got here. And that has hurt us hard and badly with staff retention and staff hiring.
Yeah, it never goes away.
And I agree with Maura that we need to keep that under our sight in our sights. But Jim, this is what I have to say about this. If you don't maintain this facility, it's going to end up like the other
No,
facilities.
we
Have to maintain it.
We're going to great efforts to maintain it.
You are, and I appreciate the support for that. This is very.
And I'm
difficult.
100% in favor of maintaining every facility,
Thank you.
but cautiously and with a great deal of sweat and number crunching on every item.
Jim, we have worked really hard on this. It is not easy. This stuff's expensive. It is not, you can't cut corners on it.
And the problem is right now is not the best time to buy, but we have the funds now. In the future, we may not have these funds.
Well, if we had done this 5 years ago,
We'd be in a way
Look,
better
the minute
spot.
I got here, I was
That-
telling
We'd
you,
be here in 5 years and
That's a point I want to make. The track was neglected, correct? Like there was a maintenance plan that was supposed to be filed with the track.
yes,
Yes,
we got
there
to the end of
was.
life. Yep.
Hold on, stop. There was a maintenance plan that was supposed to be filed with the track.
Yes.
Because we got it with a quote,
Yes.
correct? And it was not followed, correct?
I believe that we're exactly at the end of it. I don't know the exact specifics.
No, the maintenance that was.
Think
supposed to be
The
done.
maintenance that was
Oh,
supposed to be
thank you.
formed.
I
of
don't,
the track.
okay, that Matt would know.
We
I-
did not, I believe we
did not do
decided,
that.
we
Thank
discussed.
you, Rick.
it.
I didn't
They
understand what
don't
you.
have it.
Yes, so
But,
that's my
and we
point.
need to
You-
maintain this.
You can't neglect something because you don't want to spend the money and then not expect a big ticket item later.
Yes.
So Jim, I'm not all for spending money. I'm the cheapest person you'll ever meet. Trust me. That's my kids. But what I can tell you is you can't neglect the building, and that's where we're at with this place.
Yep.
It's,
Yeah.
it's an old building.
All right. Any further discussion? All in favor? So Maura, Rick, Heather, was your hand up, or Jim, myself? All opposed? Jamie, okay. All right, that was one part of it. Now we need to do the audio video.
No, that was everything.
Oh, I thought we did
We're all
both.
done.
Oh, we did both.
Well
Yeah,
done.
he
Oh,
said,
okay.
Yeah.
Oh, you did port and,
I just want to thank Dan and Gordon for
Fine.
working on this.
Yeah,
It's not in
thank
their
you.
wheelhouse and they have
you.
worked really, really hard this last month to get you a complete quote. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much.
thank you.
all right.
So what are we going to?
Now we will go back up to 8.1, grading results, discussion and decision.
So I'll start this one off if that's okay with you.
It's fine.
Yep, thank you. Whew, been a busy couple of weeks. I've spent a lot of time talking to students. I've talked to staff at length. I've reviewed the survey data, and I've talked to Ms. DeRocher, who is taking Dr. Haynes' position, and I've talked to Ms. Mitchison, who's taking Mrs. DeRocher's position. We believe that it's time to roll out a change in our grading process for the fall, and the staff support it. We're going to have to work hard. It's not going to be a fun summer. The first thing that we want to do is change to the 100-point scale in grades 6 through 12 with letter grades. We want to change the way reassessments are done at the high school so that assignments are due when they're due and it's up to the teacher to decide whether or not a reassessment is warranted, and homework has to count. We don't know exactly what that's going to look like, whether it's 10% of the grade or if homework counting is tied to the reassessment options. We're going to work with teachers to iron out some of the details. The teachers, aside from a handful of teachers, the majority of teachers were like, thank you. This is way overdue. So I want to be clear that I have personally met with every single teacher, grades 7 through 12 in the last 5 days. And I've given them an opportunity to tell me directly what their questions and concerns are. And the clear consensus was, thank you. So I want you to hear that. K through 2, we need to talk about some things with the report cards. I need some time to work with the Bakey staff about that. Obviously, having little kids in kindergarten, 1st and 2nd grade, I don't believe philosophically that we should put them on a 100-point scale and give them A, B, C, or F. They just don't understand that. They need to know, needs improvement, excellent, meets, or partially there. We'll figure out language for that over the course of next year. What I'm recommending is that K through 2 stay status quo. 3 through 5 has been really challenging. I've talked with the staff, I've talked with the principals. It's weird because 5th grade was more like, yeah, just do the 100-point scale. And 3rd grade is more like, we need what you'd expect, right? They're little kids. So what I would recommend is that if the board wants to talk about doing a 100-point scale for grades 3 through 5, that they give the 3 through 5 teachers an opportunity to work through what that would look like, look at questions, think about the issues, and then come back to the board with a proposal next spring for the start of 23 and leave things the way they are for this year. But it's a heavy lift to move 6 through 12 anyway. So I'd like to move 6 through 12 first. And just as a preview, this is not necessarily totally germane to this, but it is. We are going to look at having some split level classes at the high school for the start of 23. Honors and college prep, because having everyone all in one room is not working. And it has been a really great 10 days listening to staff. I started talking to staff before, but when I knew we had these 7 days at the end of the year, I knew I could just sit with them and not be in a rush, not be waiting for their meeting to end, not have people shuffle in late. And boy, did they tell us a lot. So the grading conversation was very, very clear. And so I'm asking the board to consider the proposal that we move grades 6 through 12 to a 100-point scale. And that we do that for the fall of 23. And I'll work with the staff. Mr. Rocher and Ms. Mitchison are going to have a summit in July with teachers that want to have input into the manual. And then the manual will go to the administration in early August and then be rolled out to staff in early August. And that's the plan. And then we'll go through the first year and we'll probably have to make some tweaks as we go, right? Because we'll be working on it. Or we'll say, oh, note that, let's do it differently for next year. And then at the end of the year, get a revised handbook out. So we hope that it'll be really tight and comfortable for 23, but we can do this for the fall. And I want to be clear, the students want this. And that's why we're working hard to get it done for September, not because of anything else. The students have made it clear and they weren't unanimous. There were some kids that didn't feel it was the best idea. And there were some kids that loved it. And there were some kids that were like, we're in the middle. No one is, when you have a big change like this, 20% of people are going to love it and 20% aren't going to love it. And then 60% are just going to be fine as long as we're consistent. So that's my recommendation for this evening. And I'm hoping that the board will vote so we can get to work literally tomorrow morning at 9 a.m.
Yep. I believe when you made your recommendation, you said fall of 23.
No, fall of 22 for the 6 through 12 and fall of 23 for 3 through 5.
Okay.
Jamie?
So I appreciate the comments of the superintendent. I agree with virtually everything you just said. Maybe some nuances on 3 to 5 that I've already reviewed with you.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think those ancillary items are correct. I do think that we need to have an honors program like that. I do think that we have to address homework, and I do think that we have to address this. I can just keep on making it up whenever.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that you brought those in. I've had a number of people contact me about this subject when it came up in the agenda after the agenda was released, saying, geez, what's going on here? I thought this was already done. I don't understand what's happening here. Why are you looking at this again? So I want to just take a moment and step through that information. So
And quickly, because we have 17 minutes until
I won't take
Mr.
17
O'Shaughnessy is.
unless you want me to, but I won't take 17 minutes. Basically, last June, we put a motion forward to have a numeric grading system that's tied to alpha. And the discussion at that point in time was primarily, if not almost exclusively, about a 0 to 100 grade. Though the motion that I made was inarticulate and it said a numeric tied to an alpha.
Alpha tied to a numeric, actually, but it's the alpha tied to numeric, just to be clear that.
Yeah. And even at one point in time, I think it was Chairman Dutton pointed out that, you know, the 0 to 100 gave more motivational aspects to the students than the 4-point scale. And then we progressed. We got a 7-0 vote on that. We progressed, and the administration came forward. And rather than having it ready for the start of this coming year, 22-23, we were able to move, I think, 7 through 12 immediately in the fall of 21.
That's correct.
21-22 school year. So way ahead of schedule. And it took us a while to figure out that one of the reasons was that there was a misunderstanding as to what it was that was intended versus what was implemented. So what was implemented was the 1 to 4 scale as the numeric that was tied to the alpha. And those 1 to 4 scale numerics were tied to the old E's, P's, IPs, and P's. And that's why they were able to do it so quickly. When that misunderstanding came to light, there was further discussions amongst the administration and the board saying, was that really what the intent was? Yes, the intent was really 0 to 100. Well, let's reach out and let's do surveys, and people might remember surveys went out, and I'll just remind people of what some of those survey results were. So we reached out to the community and we said, well, where do you stand on 0 to 100? And the parents were the most unanimous. 87% of parents said, we prefer 0 to 100. That's the right way to go. That's what we prefer. The teachers, 54.5% of the teachers said, we prefer also 0 to 100. And the students said, well, we would be more motivated, because we asked the students about motivation. They said, we would be more motivated to have 0 to 100, but we'd prefer not to do that. We'd prefer to stay with the one that's less motivated. And both of those were like 54 to 46 kind of numbers, 45 and a half. And so I went back and I looked further at the data sets from the teachers and say, well, what's in the teacher concerns? And so some of the teachers that said, I prefer 1 to 4 also said, but I have zero issue whatsoever with 0 to 100. So if you look at that and you said, which teachers either preferred or had no issues with it, that number is 60%. 66% of the teachers actually responded, which is a pretty good number. But that means a third of the teachers did not either have an opinion or did not want to share their opinion or were concerned about the unanimity, so didn't give their opinion. But of the teachers that actually shared their opinion versus the total number of teachers, I think that we had somewhere in the neighborhood of about 28% expressed strongly that they'd like to stay with the current system. And of that, some group of students or teachers said, yeah, I'm really concerned specifically about grades all the way up to 5th. That's what my big concern is. So that's where the 5th came into it. And on the bright side, it's the comments that they made were very caring and concerned about the students, and they wanted what was best for the kids. So you want to hear that from teachers. At the same time, the parents of those students were 87% saying this is what we want for our kids. So I think from my perspective, we have a pretty strong consensus in the community to move to 0 to 100. Parents across the board, even with students and with teachers. Superintendent Ambrose has been mentioning from the beginning, he has concerns about pre-K to 2. That has been echoed by some of the teachers and other administrators that he's talked to. And so there is clearly some concerns about pre-K to 2, and there's a mixed bag on 3 to 5. But I felt the need to step through with people where that is. I personally, clearly, I made the first motion. The motion carried 7-0. I believe strongly, based upon work that I did on the graduation certificates, that this is the way to go. When you look at the top level grading, top level schools that are performing in our area, they're on the NADAF system. And the ones that are performing the worst are on a complete competency-based system of E, P, IP, BP, et cetera. So I think this is in the best interest of the students. I think there's a very strong consensus in the community to move that way. And I have reviewed this motion with Superintendent Ambrose. It's slightly different than what he had, but I think this is the right way to go. I make a motion to adopt a 0 to 100 scale grading system that is then translated to A through F letter grades, with both available for review for the marking period for grades 6 through 12, starting with the beginning of the school year 22-23. And that we adopt a 0 to 100 scale grading system that is then translated to A through F letter grades, with both available for review each marking period for grades 3 to 5, with a timeline and initial concerns review by the administration reported out in October, with full implementation for the school year 23-24. And that we continue to discuss, review, and revise the grading system in pre-K through 2 and establish a proposal by March 2023 for implementation for school year 23-24. So I'd like a second on that, and then we can have further discussions.
I'll second it. And can I ask a question?
Yeah,
Discussing it.
discussion.
So what are you proposing for 3 through 5, that it will start this fall, or you're
No.
proposing
No.
that they can explore it?
I'm saying that the
And then-
board would direct that we are going to move to 0 to 100 for 3 to 5. And that we ask the administration to work with the teachers and provide us feedback as regards a timeline that they could do that in,
Okay.
and any issues or concerns that they have by October, with a plan to be able to implement by next fall, not fall 22, but fall 23
Okay.
for the 23-24 school year.
Okay.
Yeah, So yeah, I agree. 6 through 12, 3 through 5, I agree as well. Just because the fact that most of the teachers that filled out that survey for that grade are probably gone. So we're going to need the input from the new teachers, the experts who we hired that have degrees in education, to make their recommendations on how best to provide the education and the grading.
And I agree with that.
I agree with the 6 through 12. The 3 to 5, I agree. We need to wait another year. But I am deadly against K through 2 having any sort of letter grade. Like K through 12, they should be learning about school, learning about peer interactions, learning how to be a student, how to be in school. And we want them to have positive interactions with their teachers and with with their peers. And I think putting a letter grade will just, it will just
And I
could
don't-
impact their
Yeah,
self-esteem.
the motion is not to turn it into an A through F,
Okay.
0 to 100. It's to evaluate the grading system that is currently there and determine if there's a better way to grade report. I think the handbooks in most
Yeah.
of the schools are completely out of date
Okay.
and need to be updated.
I just want to make that
So, yeah,
comment known.
and so I did read his motion, and it's not asking pre-K through 2 to switch to A through F,
Okay.
0 to 100. It's leaving it status quo with review and what was the
Yeah,
exact-
let me reread
just that portion.
and we would adopt as part of the motion that we continue to discuss, review, and revise the grading system in pre-K through 2 and establish a proposal by March for implementation school year 23-24.
Okay.
So we need to update K2.
Okay.
It's going to be all about learning to read, not reading to learn.
Right. Mhm.
3rd grade, we start reading to learn,
Mhm.
but there are still students that are struggling. And I would love to talk to the new 2 administrators at Memorial, get to meet my new team in 4th grade, because there are 3 new teachers, sadly. And although one of them went to an intervention position and stayed in the district, I want to be very clear. We have 3 openings, but only 2 have left. And we need to build a team and then talk about what this is going to look like for them. Don't be shocked if they come back to you and say they don't love this for 3rd grade. 5th grade is going to be more comfortable with it. 3, 4, and 5 are tricky years because you're getting them ready for middle school. I met with the 5th grade team last week. They're like, we're fine. 4th grade was not. 3rd grade, I didn't talk to them about it because we were talking about some other issues that are on the agenda around IEPs and special ed needs. So I 7.6.2 that we're going to get to later.
Okay.
So I just need you to know that we may get some pushback, but I think having the time to discuss it and having a clear directive helps me to be clear about what we're doing, and then we can bring proposals forward about how to do that best.
So I think from what Tom had originally said, if I might, I don't think there's any disagreement whatsoever on 6 to 12.
None.
And the only nuance on the 3rd to 5th is setting the direction that we are going to adopt a 0 to 100 scale. But we want timeline and issue concerns brought to us in October.
Yep.
And the plan would be to implement in September of 23.
Yeah. And Ms. Mitchison and Mr. Rocher are perfectly fine with that.
Okay.
I spoke to them today.
I have a question.
Yep.
So this past year, 4 and 5 did go to had letter grades. Are we going to continue with that?
Yes, we will
And
continue
If I
with
can
that.
just make a comment too to that, as a parent, that makes me feel better too, as somebody who, I'm in favor of the 100-point scale. Just for me, I think that helps to buy some time to get the new team at Memorial, make more decisions. But I can tell you personally, as a parent, this year, the 4th and 5th, having the letter grades was a great step in the right direction. So we're not completely forgetting about that. We have made some improvements. So
Thank you.
Yes.
And I want to be clear that I think that I'm going to work with the team and recommend that it's letter grades that are A, B, C, or needs improvement. Because now they're going to have 3rd grade. This last year was 4th, 5th, and 6th. That's a way easier sell for me than 3rd. And I need to talk to the staff and the new principal and figure that out.
Right. Which is why, the October
Love it.
bring concerns.
Love it.
Yep.
It's a great way to do it. I think JJ's chomping at the bit, and I'm trying to be sensitive to him because we have a rule about the school board rep.
Yep.
Could we have him just share this 1
If
minute?
you want to talk about the high school
Okay.
students,
I know you all don't want to hear this, but students don't want this. Like realistically, a majority of students voted that they don't want this. And I've asked around because this is something I'm fairly passionate about. I feel that I and a majority of students feel that the 4.0 system is just realistically better at portraying what you need to do to get to a certain point. It's better at portraying what you need to do to complete an assignment correctly. And it's better at communication wise than a 100-point scale. 100-point scale leaves, I've taken classes. So I've taken classes on VLAC. So I have experience in the 100-point system as well. And I find that the 100-point system leaves a lot for interpretation and individual basis. And the 4.0 system is much more, it's much more straightforward to students. It's easier for them to pick up on, understand, and see where their grade came from, which I feel like is much more important. And I understand that parents do not feel the same way and they don't get it, but that's because they didn't grow up in it. And I feel like if you look at the survey results, the more people are exposed to it. Teachers grew up with the 100, but then they're working here, and that's why it was split almost 50-50. And then as students have to live with it every day, they end up, a majority of them, favoring the 4.0 system. And I feel like the characterization that everyone wants it in the school is very inaccurate, and that more research should be done by the board into why students feel like the 4.0 system is better, because the survey results showed that. I feel like before making a final decision, the board should do more research into why students feel that way.
So JJ, I met with you and you were one of the students that didn't agree.
Mhm.
And you were very vocal about that. And I appreciate that. But as the school board rep, if you haven't done the work that I've done by meeting with the staff in small groups the way I have the last 5 days,
Yeah.
or met with many classes of students the way I have over the last 2 years, I can't give credence to what you're saying. You have to speak for yourself, not everyone else. So it's important for you to speak for yourself because you don't agree. But I have to say that I'm recommending to the board that we make this change. I'm sorry that we don't agree on this, but I really appreciate your perspective.
No, that's fine.
Thank you.
I've talked to students, so
Yeah.
I'm
And
just
that's-
representing them. That's what I'm here for.
and that's fine, because I have kids in the school system too, and they don't love the 4-point scale and they don't understand the 4-point scale. So there's definitely differences in opinion.
It's decisive.
Exactly.
And as I said at the beginning, if you have 100 people, 20 of them are going to love it, 20 are going to hate it, and people will be in the middle, and it's okay.
In
Yeah.
court of law, they call that
Can
hearsay.
we vote so we can
Yes.
I got.
take a
I wanna
break
say-
before?
Jim, yep.
Good job. Good job.
I'm 1,000% in favor of this, and I think it's long overdue. And I'm proud of the district for moving it to this. But I also think from a point of view of intervention and parents looking at where kids stand in terms of their knowledge, what they've acquired in knowledge, what they know in math, what they know in all these core subjects. A 0 to 100 scale is very precise. It's much more precise than a 4.0 or a 3.75 or a 3.0.
I think that can all be subjective.
Yeah.
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 I think it can all
So
be
that's why I'm in favor of this. I think from an evaluation point and from an intervention point, it's going to be very helpful.
All right. If there's no further discussion, all in favor? Unanimous. Thank you.
I got it for you.
Are we taking a break?
I printed one for
No,
you.
we have, we have,
Take a break before are we doing something else?
well,
before
we still have the strategic plan
And then
decision
Yeah, I need a break too.
and SST representative.
Can
but
can we do the two things that are left before we take a break and then go to Jim? Because I want to
we'll
get
take
these
a
two
break and
done.
then go to Jim.
Like we can take a break right before Jim sits down. He's over
Yeah,
there
there's
waving
Jim.
at me.
Yeah.
The strategic plan is, unless someone has some burning question, I mean, I've spent hours with some of you to get this done.
Motion to approve the strategic.
Thank you.
Second,
Thank you.
I just have one comment.
Yep.
I'm in support of approving the strategic plan, but I think the board needs to take on the task of looking at revising the vision statement, not immediately. A lot of the work in the strategic plan has been to build in rigor in our academics, which I think we all agree has been lacking, and also to improve competencies in terms of accomplishment. And so the strategic plan talks a lot about, and everything in here is good. I just think we need to add one item. Our desire that all students in the school district develop a passion for learning, become self-directed, develop a willingness to continuously improve, become informed decision makers, become lifelong learners, and prepare themselves for the global world. That's all futuristic. There's nothing in there about right now. So I'm proposing that we look at putting something in there about right now. And this is just a suggestion. I'm not married to this at all. But where it says, it is our desire that all students in the school district, where it says develop a passion for learning, right before that, I would say be well-educated and competent in core academic subjects. And then go on with the rest of it. So I'm just bringing this to the board's attention to say, we're revising our whole approach here in terms of a lot of emphasis being done on core curriculum, on improving academics, on intervention. The vision plan, the vision statement says nothing about that. So I think we need to work on interjecting a couple of sentences or a word or few that does address that.
Heather?
I just think the vision statement matches a portrait of the graduate. For those of us that worked on the portrait of the graduate, that's really where the vision statement comes from, because that is our end goal, right? We want that portrait of a graduate, and that's really where that vision statement came from.
The vision statement is much older than the portrait of the graduate.
Right. It is an older vision statement. And
Well,
could
it
be-
looks, it matches directly.
It
to our
does.
portrait.
It does.
Like,
Okay, yeah. Maura?
I don't disagree with Jim, but as we've stated many times before, this is a working document. I'm not opposed to doing that. I think we can approve this and I think we can still address
Absolutely.
it. I think it's I agree with what you're saying.
I'm
I-
air fist bumping you.
I do agree with you.
You're not fist
And
bumping
what's
me.
perfect is that we have new administrators that can add valuable input from their past education.
Mhm.
Absolutely. All right. There's no further discussion. All in favor?
I do have 18 pages.
No, you do not. Unanimous.
Patty is going to be so happy this happened before
down.
she departed us.
hey, Patty.
Thank you to Dr. Haynes for all of her
All right.
hard work and
All right.
Christine DeRocher.
Yes, thank you very, very much.
Okay, so the SST, I just need one of you to be on the SST. Once a year, there's a meeting where you have to go and vote for their budget.
I'll do it.
It's really cool. You want to do it?
We'll just.
You have to be available on a Monday night at 4:30 occasionally to go.
Yeah, I can do that.
All right.
Okay.
You good with that, Maura?
That's fine.
All right.
Break.
Thank you.
Well, hold
right.
on, guys. Don't we still have a second?
Oh, we have a
public
second public comment.
comment?
Oh.
Did you?
You being serious?
That's right. Yeah, we actually do.
Yeah,
All
Sorry.
right.
Thank you, Rick.
Actually, I'm
All
being
right.
serious. for all
If there's anyone that has anything they would like to come up to the podium.
Really, now's the time to do it.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay.
Oh, your
We will
mom was
take
going to
a-
step up. but You're not going to sit at the podium, huh? You're going to sit over here with
He's
us?
sitting right there.
I'll go here, but if I'm at the podium, then my back's to the camera,
Okay.
which that's
can't-
my handsome side. So
They
I
can't
was going to say, you're kind of like Rick. You want to.
I combed my hair for this.
Good size usually when people aren't looking at the face, but you know, that was a joke. You can laugh at that one.
By the time my term is up, I will know whether you're joking or not.
Okay.
All right.
You want to intro, no fanfare, like no like music or anything.
Dun, dun,
All right,
dun.
fine.
Or dun, 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 dun.
Do like a drum
I'll-
roll. All right, so we have Mr. O'Shaughnessy here tonight. He's legal counsel for our school district. And he's just going to go over roles and responsibilities for the school board and budget committee. Make sure we're all doing what we're supposed to be doing and we know exactly what our roles are.
Yeah. So thanks everybody. I hope everybody brought like a really sharp pencil or a lot of ink in their pen and a notepad. I want you to try to write down like mostly everything I say. Just kidding. One of you. Yeah.
I'm
one of-
looking at this big packet.
Yeah. So my name's Jim O'Shaughnessy. I'm an attorney at Drummond Woodsum. I practice exclusively school law. I represent a lot of public school districts in New Hampshire. My firm, School Practice, represents a couple of hundred public school districts across New Hampshire and Maine. So we're really we're really entrenched in these issues. And I don't know how many trainings I've done on board roles and responsibilities. I literally could do most of this just with my eyes closed. So I actually think it's much more engaging if I'll go through the basics, right? And I'll kind of outline things and we'll talk and we'll go through these materials a little bit. It'd be really helpful if you ask questions though, or pose what you think are impossible scenarios. Yeah, there we got one already.
Can I start with one right off the bat and be the problem child?
Yeah, and I love this. This is great. You're not gonna. We call it in our group. We call it stump the chump. And you can't see my tie shirt combo, right? I know it's a little bit edgy, but like after COVID, I just don't care. I'm going for it now. So yeah, stump the chump. If you have questions, ask them. You can ask them now. You can save them for later. And yeah, go for it. I'll be in charge. Do I want to let the chair run it or just let me? All right, I
gonna
got
You're
it.
the
This is
man,
all me.
Jim. Go for it, buddy.
Go for it.
Introduce yourself and ask the question.
Are you talking to me?
Vanessa, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Jim, I'm not there. Is the material available so I can follow along online?
Oh, I have an extra
You don't have
copy.
one?
I don't have.
Oh,
one.
that's all they
That's my
wanted?
question.
We have a,
Diana Rooney wants one too, our HR person.
Well, too
Yeah,
bad.
I've got Diana.
I would have waited, but I figured that wasn't the right thing to wait for.
Okay,
Have-
so I did something really cheesy. I actually have materials, but I just went online and Googled New Hampshire School Board Association roles and responsibilities for New Hampshire school boards. It's a PDF document. I found it online. I like it. It basically has the exact same outline that I follow. It's pretty short and concise. It's publicly available. They use it in their trainings. None of you can say you made that up. It's not true, because my friends over at NHSBA use the same thing. So, and they do these trainings all across the state this time of year and during the summer. So Google it. All right.
Vanessa, I just texted you what it says at the bottom to help you find it.
Thank you. I'm looking now.
Yeah, you'll get it. Ken, did you have a question or that was it?
That was exactly my question. Is I
right.
didn't have one.
All right. This is a great, so the purpose of this training is so that board members walk away understanding what your job is and what your job really isn't. And I think since you are volunteers, doing this in your spare time for fun, and because you like punishment for doing a thankless volunteer job, it's probably a good idea for you to know exactly what really isn't your responsibility and what really is your responsibility. And the clearer you can draw that line for yourselves, I think the easier time you will have in your role here. I think the easier time the superintendent, the business administrator, and the other administrators in the district will have doing their jobs. And there won't be sort of tension because the two are fighting for power or wondering whether they should have done something or if someone else should have done it. There's a great quote right in the middle of this. It says, the role of the school board is not to run the schools, but to see that they are run well. I think that's really great. Your job is, you're not running any school districts. You are a school board. Your role is to hire someone to run the schools. Pretty obvious, right? But it literally is the mantra. If you just remember nothing from this meeting, remember your job is to make sure the district is run well by hiring people to take care of that. That means you're not getting involved in the day-to-day. You're not getting involved in personnel matters and student matters, except in some rare circumstances.
Or personnel committee.
Or even if you're on a personnel committee, you're still not running the day-to-day. You're on a committee that oversees some board level personnel matters that that then are referred back to the full board for review. So we'll get through some of the more specifics, but the general concept, superintendent is your employee. You hire your superintendent to run the school district for you. If I walk away now, I think, and you remember that, and you literally think of that anytime you have a question, your job will be easier as a school board member. Your superintendent is your only employee, really. I mean, he's not the only employee of the district. He's really the only employee of the board. He, with your approval, employs business administrator, the human resources director, the special ed director, the assistant superintendent, all the other staff in the district is technically under the superintendent's umbrella. So when you're dealing with issues with the district, you deal with those issues through your superintendent. And if you don't like how things are going in the district, you need to make sure that the superintendent understands. And if you want to find out what's going on in the district, you give clear directives to your superintendent to bring that information back to you to study and analyze that. If you have concerns about your superintendent's performance, you evaluate the superintendent. And if you don't like your superintendent and don't think your superintendent's doing a good job, you get a different superintendent. That's kind of how the game works, right? Other way around, it works as well. If somebody doesn't like a school board member, doesn't like how a school board member is doing their job. The solution is vote in a new school board member, right? You're elected. People aren't happy with the work you're doing, school board or budget committee. The solution to that problem, I've said this in court, I've said it in all kinds of places. It's a solution at the ballot box. Go elect a different school board. If the community doesn't like the school board or the superintendent, likewise, vote in a new school board to get rid of the superintendent. So that's kind of the structure. It's really basic. You are the big picture running the whole district. Superintendent runs the day-to-day operations. Okay. Let's get into how I break this down into specifics. I like to be overly simplistic and say there are three wheels, there are three wheels on this, or legs on the stool, or wheels on the tricycle, three branches of responsibility. And it's sort of laid out here. Section A, your first obligation is you are the policy makers. That's what the state law says. The state law says the school district's duty is to adopt policies to ensure the administration of a safe and effective school or something like that, right? Your policy makers. The conversation I walked in on today, where Jamie was making a proposal or a presentation about grading, is a matter of broad district policy. What is our grading policy going to be? That is squarely within the purview of the board to be talking about how we grade students. There's a lot of different examples, but you have a policy manual. You have a policy subcommittee. You should probably are and will be reviewing, revising, and amending policies over the next couple of months. I think you do a lot of that work in the summer, I feel like.
No, we do it more in the school year, but we do a lot of it.
That's put all your energy and efforts into policies. Your policies, everyone's policies need work. They need to be updated. And after 2.5 years of a pandemic and a bunch of cultural things going on in the world, your policies all need an update. So focus on your policies. There's going to be not a lot of laws passed in the next couple of weeks. The governor's going to sign, and you will need to update your policies in accordance with those laws. That's your work. I mean, that's the board's job to deal with that. You set the policy, and then everybody that you hire and all the families and all the kids, they're supposed to follow the policies that you legislate through policymaking.
Jim, isn't the root of the term administrator to administer policy and budget?
Yeah.
That's really what we do.
You're administering the school district. The district sets the policy. So policies are a really they're incredibly powerful things. Anytime I get a call from, you can ask Diana and Tom and anybody who calls me and any one of my associate attorneys who walk into my office and ask me a question, I'm always like, well, did you look at the law and did you look at the policy? Usually as a lawyer, when someone asks you a question, the first thing you say is, well, what's the law that applies here, right? That's literally our training as lawyers. What's the law that applies here? What's the law that governs here? It's that same exact analysis that you're supposed to do when there's a question about, we got a $4,000 donation. What do we do? And Matt calls, he'll almost always already say, well, I've already looked at the policy, because Matt is an attorney by training. So he does that. But I'll have districts call me with that question and I'll say, well, let's look in your J series, I think it would be, right? On a procurement policy, on donations. Let's look at, and I always say to my clients, what does your policy say? So your policies are what drive decisions. When parents complain, this is so boring, right? But parents complain about library materials, or they complain about anything you want to talk about under the sun. The first place you go to is, what does your policy say, right? That's a very powerful role, policy making. There are some mandatory policies. Those are listed on page 3. Those are policies where the law specifically mandates you have a policy. There are other policies that I think of as being mandatory. You really need to have those policies. They're must-haves. But this is a list of the mandatory policies you need to have in place. So that's the first leg of the chair, right? Does that make sense?
Mhm.
I'm going to skip over B and C and D and go to E. We can go back to the other ones. The second leg of the chair, as I think of it, is your potential role as a quasi-judicial body. I think in my time here, I don't know that we've actually held a formal hearing with a faculty member or a student.
A student one time.
One
I
time,
remember.
One time a student.
a full hearing?
Yep.
Or is it just a meeting?
I don't remember. It was pretty hearing. It felt like a hearing.
A hearing-y? If I was,
Hearing-y.
People were speaking.
people,
I can't hear you.
yeah. So the second role you play is as a quasi-judicial or an adjudicative body. So you're sometimes sitting as the judge and jury as a decision maker, right? And for instance, if a student is expelled or a student does something very egregious and the superintendent suspends that person, principal suspends for 10 days, they refer it to the superintendent for 10 days, and it's capped at 20, the superintendent then refers that expulsion to the school board, and you will sit like this in the round as a hearings body. That's part of the due process that students are owed. The parents will pull the tables up. Parents will sit with little Timmy, sad off to the side, and administration will sit over there, maybe the principal and a couple of assistant principals with all the evidence about what Timmy did. And you will sit like a judge and jury. You will have to be unbiased. You will have to have not already rendered a decision on the outcome. And you will hear evidence from both sides. They will be excused. You will then deliberate and you will write a decision. And that decision is a legal decision of the board. And that is a legally convened due process hearing under the law. You hold similar hearings when you are in the employee context, whenever a superintendent is contemplating terminating or dismissing a teacher or a principal or anybody who's defined as a teacher under the law. Superintendent can't fire a teacher. The board can only fire a teacher. The superintendent can't. Under 189.13, the law requires that the teacher is entitled to a full and fair hearing on the record. And they can only be fired basically for the 3 I's: immortality, insubordination, or incompetence. So as a school board, superintendent isn't even sitting with you. Typically he or she is sitting with an administrator, and they're prosecuting the termination of this teacher. And on the other side of the table is the teacher and their attorney, and there's witnesses maybe in the back of the room or sequestered. And again, you're sitting as a judicial body. You are judge and jury. And these are miserable hearings to participate in. I've done them many times. They often last late into the night and sometimes over multiple nights. And it's exhausting and emotionally draining. And nobody really wants to have to be involved in those. So often we resolve those types of situations with some form of an agreement. But sometimes you don't reach an agreement, and the superintendent will have to bring a teacher forward for a termination hearing. In that capacity, again, you are a quasi-judicial body. Your decision is a legal decision. Other employment contexts where you'll sit in a quasi-judicial capacity, you hear about non-renewals, right? You hear about non-renewals. Typically early April, the superintendent is making decisions with the building administrators, if there are any teachers who have attained continuing contract status, tenure status, whether any of them will be offered a contract to come back. And if the decision is made not to offer tenured teachers a contract to return back, they get a notice of non-renewal. They have a right to get reasons, and they have a right to request a hearing before the school board. So there it is again. You're in a due process hearing. You are judge and jury. You're hearing the evidence about whether whatever performance or whatever issue exists warrants not renewing that teacher to return the following school year.
Jim, can you say those 3 I's again? You said only for 3 I's.
Immorality, insubordination, or incompetence. I mean, that's a real shortcut.
Yep.
Immorality is the only one that's like really spelled out as immorality in the statute. The statute says failure to conform to the reasonable rules and regulations of the school board, which we have sort of interpreted to mean insubordinate. You're not following the rules, or failing to follow the adopted competency standards. So like the expectations of competency that you have for an educator, and we just call that incompetence basically. So if you have a teacher, I've gotten this call, a teacher didn't understand some very kind of basic mathematical concept and was teaching kids like the wrong, mean, average. And she was, I think, confusing the two and taught an entire part of a lesson, like several weeks, the wrong 2 concepts until I think a parent, this is like a sensational story. It doesn't happen, but and she had written it on the wall. The definitions were wrong. And so the principal took a picture of that, and, we ended up having to ask that person to resign, because you can't have educators educating incorrectly. That's, as you can imagine, pretty egregious, right? That's sort of undercuts the entire purpose of that doesn't happen very often. But in this particular circumstance, it did. And so it met one of the standards under the statute. Okay.
Thank you.
Typically, what we're dealing with is egregious conduct that we would call some form of immorality. So sometimes that's conduct that's unbecoming of a role model. Educators are role models. They have a very important position in society, caring for and educating kids. And when they engage in conduct that deteriorates their ability to be a role model, we think of that as being an immoral act. But there's a lot of things that will fall under the fairly broad umbrella of what we call immorality. But that's kind of the catch-all for a lot of the behavior we see.
It's very subjective.
It's all very subjective. And that's what
Value piece, like what you consider as morally.
And so how do you define morality? It's not entirely objective. There is an objective component. Would a reasonable person think what that person did is immoral? But there's also a subjective component. What are the morals, virtues, characteristics in a particular society for a particular person? I've thought and written, drafted, and argued about this concept so many times. And the issue of morals and values is constantly evolving. Part of the job of the board is to work your way through all that. And it's really, really not easy. Taking a step back, I would say 99 out of 100 times, what we're trying to do is figure out, is there a way to rehabilitate this employee? Is there a way to tell them what they did was improper and put them back in the classroom and rehabilitate them as educators? If the answer is yes, then we will do that. If the answer is no, this is the kind of behavior where the superintendent has determined, like, I can't in good conscience return this person to a classroom, I won't do it. Well, then that's when we will appear before you. And I've dealt with a whole bunch of really strange cases where the superintendent is basically like, I'm not putting this person in the classroom. If the board wants to overturn my decision, they can, but I'm not putting this person in the classroom. So because that exists out there as a role of a school board, sitting judge and jury in a hearing, there are certain day-to-day things that the superintendent will come in and say, I can't tell you everything about this case. I can only tell you a couple very, very limited things. And that's because they don't want to taint your ability to sit in a hearing and render impartial judgment. You can't prejudge a case. You can't already decide what you think the outcome is, or decide that you're not going to be impartial because you heard about this through a friend of a friend who was a daughter in the kid's class, and yada yada yada. Like, you have to maintain a pretty high level of impartiality, and you can't prejudge an outcome of a case. If you do, and that has happened to me one time, if it turns out that there is concrete evidence that you have already predetermined an outcome in a case, then what has to happen is you all are basically removed from the hearings role. You can't sit in a hearing, and whoever's representing the board has to go out and find substitute board members. Sometimes that's budget committee members is a good pool of people, or town select board members who have taken an oath of office. We recruit them to sit in place of the board, or board members who have forced themselves to be removed from the hearing because of their bias or lack of impartiality. And I had to do that once. It wasn't cool.
So if that situation arises and it determines that board members need to be asked to leave, like a non-public hearing of some kind, which happened to me, do you stop the hearing, go get the selectmen or the budget committee members and reschedule it, or how does it work?
If it happens in the middle of the hearing and we still have a quorum, I mean, that's sort of the tough part, is, do we have enough board members to make a quorum? And then the board decides. But typically, if you find out in the middle of a hearing, oh my goodness, I didn't realize this is like, my neighbor's kid, or I used to babysit the mom, or whatever, right? You recuse yourself and the board continues without you. So you just have one less vote.
As long as there's a quorum.
Long as there's a quorum. I had a situation where the board found out, this was a case where a teacher had been arrested for some very bad drug-related offense, and it was published in the newspaper. Care anymore, fire them. They haven't had a hearing. They haven't heard this person's side of the story yet. They've just been arrested, and an arrest is not a conviction. I mean, if you're arrested, you're not even at that point. You haven't even been indicted. So an arrest alone is kind of early in the process, and the board declared the person needs to be fired, and the attorney said that board can't sit and hear this case in an unbiased fashion. And I said, I can't argue against that, because they're on the record of unanimously voting to fire this person already. So they've already predetermined the outcome. It's an interesting case to kind of think about, because it's the reason why the superintendent will try to protect you from receiving certain information, and how a superintendent walks that line is also challenging. There was a case in the 90s where a board member who actually at the time was a school lawyer, was on a school board in a town that he did not represent as a lawyer, became involved in developing an improvement plan for a school principal. like for whatever reason, this board member was just very, very involved and very outspoken and helped draft the improvement plan, sat down in meetings with the teacher on the improvement plan. And then later, when they non-renewed that principal, the principal appealed to the State Board of Education and said, well, this board member sat in on the non-renewal hearing and that they were prejudiced because they had been involved in the development of that improvement plan. And the State Board of Education agreed and overturned the non-renewal on the basis that it wasn't due process, it wasn't fair. That case was appealed to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said, basically, this is a close call, but board members can know something about the underlying facts. They can have some involvement in the underlying stuff just because you know stuff. You get involved, and that being tainted with a little bit of knowledge doesn't render you incapable of sitting in a hearing. So that again becomes a very kind of subjective and open-ended thing. And we usually have to talk, superintendent and I, or the board and I, about whether, your activity now basically precludes you from sitting in on a matter. Student matters. There's a whole list on page 4. Manifest educational hardship requests where students are asking the district to send a student out of district for a couple of years. We've already talked about suspensions and expulsions, appeals of bullying findings. If the administration finds that a student has been a bully or finds that a student was not bullied, that finding is appealable in a lot of policies to the school board. So you may find yourself again in a hearing with Timmy the bully and the mom, and on the other side, the administration defending their decision that Timmy was a bully or not a bully, and the board sort of hearing that and having to render an impartial decision. In those circumstances, it could be hundreds of kids involved or tens of kids involved in a school. You could have heard about it from your kids' kids, or your kids may have been involved and may know the kid and may know the teacher and blah, 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 and all that stuff. So the superintendent's going to try to protect you from knowing too much so that you're not having to recuse yourself. We want you all in these seats in these hearings. That's the goal. We want you here. We don't want you out and having to find some, crazy budget committee member like Ken to have to come in.
Day one.
So let me give you an example. We had a staff member recently reach out to a board member, and they wanted to share their experience in the district that happened a while ago because of all of this hubbub about exit interviews. And the board member did the right thing. They told me that the previous staff member had reached out to them. Well, it turns out there was a massive personnel matter with that person, and the board member would not have known. It would not have been appropriate for the board member because there's a possibility that could have ended up back here later. It was a big deal. You wouldn't know as board members that this had occurred. I knew when the board member told me the person's name, I was like, slow motion, no, because they don't know what's going on. If you get involved, you risk not being able to be involved. And that's not where you need to be as an elected official. Jim, am I wrong?
No, that's exactly right. I mean, what we typically say is you can provide general information, but you really can't provide specific detail to the board. You can know generally about the subject or some of the things that are going on, but not enough that you're going to be able to draw conclusions, which is really, really challenging. You want to know what the administrator is doing. You want to know what the superintendent's doing. You want to be able to continue to support them. But there's only a certain amount of information you can know. So the conversations we often have, and I think Diana and Tom have been very conscientious about this, or what can I tell the board? Or Tom will say, this is what I'm thinking of explaining to the board. Is that okay? And sometimes my answer is, you could tell them more than that. Because
usually he says no.
But sometimes it's like, no. Like, because I can see where these things can end up going 2 steps down the road. I've been in enough of those situations where I'm like, question from Vanessa.
Sorry, you'll get used to me. But if somebody's already left the district and wants to share open information with board members, why would that be a problem? I'm just curious.
It doesn't have to do with that person's personal issue. It has to do with what they may provide for information about other employees in the district or kids in the district to the board member. So we really
Okay.
want to refer them through the chain of command rather
Mhm.
than ask them to provide information to a school board member about an individual employee or a student issue. I mean, that's just, that
So the
gets
chain,
now involved in individual personnel matters. So you're really never supposed to have involvement in personnel matters until they come to you in the form of a hearing. The exception being, and we've talked about this, and I think this board has been sort of involved in these conversations. The exception being when there's a liability issue and you need to be aware of a lawsuit or a pending claim, obviously. The exception is when there's an allegation that superintendent's breaking the law. Who's zooming in on me right now? Superintendent's breaking the law, the superintendent's violating school board policy or DOE regulations, or if there's collectively a lot of evidence that the actions of the administration are detrimental to the district. I mean, and they go against what the board wants. The board has asked for this and the administration is doing something completely different. The board will need to know that. Otherwise, individual personnel actions, the board is not, it's not what they're here for. It's just not. And I know that's hard because the school board, you're stewards of the district, right? You're elected to make sure that the school district is run well. Right? So how do you do that if you're not supposed to be getting involved in individual board personnel matters? Well, the answer is you hired somebody. So pass them on to that person. And if you're not happy with the outcome, then deal with that person, right? Deal with the superintendent, ask for a follow-up, ask for some more information about a particular circumstance. In Sanborn, you also have an HR director, and she's really good. And districts don't always have HR directors, and fewer still have very good ones. And sometimes the HR director can be a somewhat independent person from the superintendent, same as the BA. You know, although they're under that person in the organizational chart, they're an HR director. So if they're aware of some circumstance identified regarding the superintendent, law, policy, anything like that, or the business administrator or anybody else in that administrative row echelon, as HR director, they can report that issue to the chair, or they can come talk to me, and then I'll give them a roadmap for here's how we deal with that. You and I are going to sit down with the business administrator, and then we're going to approach the chair. And I've done that so many times. It's just, that's how those issues get sussed out usually in the process.
Can I ask kind of a follow-up to Vanessa's
Yeah.
question? But so if somebody was left the district, and Vanessa's question, if they don't work here anymore, why does it matter? But don't they also have a right to come back? And I'm guessing there's a window or something of saying, well, I was wrongfully terminated or something. Isn't there another chance that that particular individual could be coming before us in a hearing anyways? Like, so just because they're no longer an employee, that doesn't mean that they're never going to come before us if they decided that I was wrongfully terminated. No.
There's a lot of different, you're sort of saying a lot of different things. So
I'm just saying, I mean, my point being, there's a chance if somebody for whatever reason was terminated last week or not renewed, there's still a chance they could come before the board. Because they could say, you didn't give me my reasons or blah, 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 blah. No? Okay.
Well, yeah, but they could look.
I'm not dismissing you. You're not.
I guess I just thought that was another reason they could still come before us. And if we had talked to that person, we can't, now we're in the know, and now we
That's the
can't.
key.
Yeah.
review
So
that.
I was trying to understand which point you were making.
Well, No, well, because Vanessa said, if they don't work here anymore, why does it matter? And you said, well, because they could talk to you about another personnel or whatnot. And I'm just saying, Well, they could talk to us about their own personnel issue and they could still be coming before us, even though they're not an
Would that go to
employee,
court
they
of
could
law?
still come before us because they could say,
I'm,
let me go and he shouldn't have, and you guys didn't follow the correct process, and now it's gonna come before the board. Because they're saying.
so I'm
Or no, I
not.
mean, it's an honest question. I guess that was my understanding.
No, so your question is what's the process after an employee separates from the district
Yeah,
for for them to raise concerns about the district or their supervisor?
well,
There's
why
an-
that they think that they were terminated wrongfully.
Yeah, everybody thinks they're terminated wrongfully. I'm just
Right,
going
but
to
is
say that.
it, wouldn't there be a hearing?
No,
Don't they have a right to
No,
have?
if they file, they'll have an exit interview typically. If you terminate an employee, you don't conduct an exit interview. You are separating from them. It's involuntary on their behalf. You don't need to conduct an exit interview unless they have a discrimination claim or some real smoking gun allegation. It's just not a best practice to interview employees that you've terminated, non-renewed, or asked to leave, or asked to resign. It's just, you're not going to gather any useful information in that process. Employees who leave voluntarily, you do an exit interview process, and a lot of that information can be gathered at that point. That's really one of the reasons you do an exit interview with human resources, is to find out whether there's some lingering liability out there. Maybe there's a supervisor who's been sexually harassing employees, and that maybe that person would tell you that information for the very first time, and you would want to say, oh gosh, we need to deal with that. But once they separate from employment, they have a problem or a disagreement or dispute with the district. There's no process for having a hearing before.
Okay.
They could file a lawsuit.
Or something like that.
Yep.
Out of our hands.
Through the court system, I think is just the easiest way to think about it.
Okay.
They could file a complaint under your case series policies, generally speaking, but they're not an employee anymore. And frankly, you guys have enough employees, and I wouldn't advise you to spend a whole lot of time and energy on former employees who left for whatever reason, who just want to sort of leave a trail of something in their wake. Focus on moving forward, because in addressing problems, but really just moving forward.
Okay.
So, but that's a good thought. Where was I? So we're talking about
Sorry, you can move
no,
on.
the three branches of responsibility.
We're on leg 2.
Yeah, we're like on leg 2. There's really, with students, there's really not a lot of other opportunities to talk about student or have student-based hearings, although the list is on page 4. Mostly it's bullying, manifest hardship, and discipline. I rarely see any other hearings before a school board for a student matter. The third leg, which is a catch-all leg, it's almost not even identified like specifically as a catch-all leg, but it's almost like your administrative ministerial role in running a school district. And it's not policy and it's not hearing, it's everything else. And everything else is your budget, right? You need a budget to run a business, so you adopt a budget. That's pretty much like your other big chunk of work. I put it into a little basket and say budget development. That's the board's job. Tom and I were talking a little bit about budget development. I've talked in other districts about budget development and what's the role of the budget committee. What is the role of the budget committee? The role of the budget committee is to develop a budget that the board needs to run the school district. So sometimes there's this misconception of whose budget is it? It's the budget committee's budget. That's your job. How do you develop your budget committee? You sit with your administration, you gather information from the business administrator and the superintendent, you listen to what the board is asking for and what changes they're making, and you adopt a budget that allows them to meet their goals and needs for the following school year. It's your budget, but it's their district. So budget committees don't have the ability to say, well, I'm going to adopt more money in my budget because you want it, to make you not riff these 4 teachers. Technically, if the district is saying, we're not hiring those 4 teachers, you don't put the money for those 4 teachers in your budget. It's just not how that system works. Unfortunately, it kind of doesn't work the other way. That if the board says, we want 4 teachers, and the budget committee says, no, we're not giving you the money for the 4 teachers, that really stinks, district, because you're not getting the money for the 4 teachers unless you want to rearrange your budget somehow. and reprioritize, but you literally only get the money that the budget committee recommends and the voters in an SB2 district eventually adopt. And that could be the proposed budget or the default budget. So that's a weird concept that people sometimes get goofed up about because a budget committee gets a lot of discretion in terms of cutting the budget, but they don't have a lot of power or discretion when it comes to expanding the budget. So if you want to give the district more money, it's, to me, I think of it as analogous as when at the deliberative session, someone stands up from the floor and says, I'd like to add $30,000 to the operating budget for the purposes of, putting new grass on the baseball infield. That grass is terrible. And the answer is, well, thank you. That's just going to go to the bottom line of the budget, though. We don't have to put new grass on the infield. So does that cause any concerns or questions, Tom?
Yeah, I had a quick question. So basically, to summarize, and I want to make sure that I understand you clearly, the way we do things is the superintendent shares the budget with the board and BudCom simultaneously in November. And then we get questions from both groups. We share those questions with the answers with both groups. The board adopts a budget and sends it to the BudCom. The BudCom reviews that budget and makes a decision about whether or not they're going to adopt that budget. If the BudCom chooses to raise or lower that budget, they cannot dictate to the school board what gets increased or cut. Does that make sense? So if you want to add $1 million to the budget to add 6 teachers or 10 teachers, great. But the board may just say, thank you very much, and then just give it back to the taxpayers at the end of the year if it passes on the warrant. It's not, I just want to make sure that the BudCom understands that they can change the appropriation request. And then if it makes it through the 2 parts of the deliberative and is passed by the community, the board still isn't obligated to spend it on the purpose that the budget committee allocates it for. They have no authority over the decisions that the school board makes for allocating those funds for expenditure.
I think that's pretty accurate.
Okay.
I mean, the budget committee is literally just giving the board more money than it's asked for. It doesn't mean the budget committee is telling the board it needs to spend that money how the budget committee sees fit. That's not the statutory job of the budget committee. The budget committee has a different job. It's to, it's really supposed to be a check on the growth of the budget. I mean, you are supposed to be keeping the budget in check with what the taxpayers and the community can afford. And that's not even a political statement. That's just why budget committees exist. That doesn't mean budget committees can't say, well, we want to give you more money. But the superintendent does the first round. I mean, that's the ask. Then the board looks at the ask and says, we can live with that. We're going to tweak it here and there. And then the budget committee looks at it and says, everything you want, we can do, except for this, we need to cut. The nuance here, though, is with respect to line item transfers. If you don't appropriate money in a line item, you can't transfer money to that line. Otherwise, the board has a lot of authority and discretion to make line item transfers, whether that's a really, really great practice or not. But you can make as many transfers as you want within a budget, right? And it happens all the time. So
Just did.
Happened today.
Well, I think it's important too to note that if I may, conversely, the same thing with reductions. So the budget committee could say, we want to cut these 3 teachers. The board can say, well, we have a lower budget, but that doesn't mean we're cutting those 3 teachers. We have to adjust the budget and deal with it. Because the board, again, the budget committee can't tell the board what to do with the appropriation. They can just give them the amount of the appropriation.
well, that's why the non-renewal date is April 15th.
Exactly.
The idea here is that budget committee, you make your cuts. Let's say you cut the equivalent of 5 teachers from the district, and you hash it out at deliberative, and the voters adopt that budget anyway. The school board has to sit down afterwards and say, okay, we can afford to lose 2, but we can't afford to lose 5. So we're going to find that money somewhere else. And then you only have 2 teachers you need to know, or RIF. Does that make sense? Yes.
I have a different question. What is the role?
I knew this was.
What is the role of the school board representative
Oh, I forgot.
to the budget committee.
They're a
What?
voting member on the budget committee.
But do they vote for the school boards? If the school board votes for we had this, I think I talked about this last year. He's giving me
Really?
the eyebrows. If the school board votes for a budget and then they send their representative to the budget committee, should the budget committee representative of the school board vote congruent with the school board, even if they don't totally agree?
So
Oh, I love giving him.
Well, I
these
think you
questions.
should be more specific. I think
ahead,
certain
Rich.
members of our board told the budget committee representative that they were to vote.
Right, right.
So
you know,
that's
So-
what happened.
It did. Yep.
I mean, nothing in the law requires the budget committee representative on the budget committee to support what the budget committee sent. I mean,
You mean what the board
requires it as a matter of law. It's a matter of how, it's politics. It's how do you want to appear to your fellow board members into the budget committee? I mean, it's not,
or the board chair could remove that person from the budget committee. and put
it's a
someone else.
political issue. It's not a legal.
Right.
It's a political issue, but the board, and I'm not the representative, so I'm not speaking for what
And Tammy's not here.
I'm not, well, no,
This is a great
Oh wait,
question.
Jamie's the
Bob.
one now. Yeah.
Great question.
it's gonna come up again this year. It's going to
is.
come up again this year.
So this is.
And
what I
you're
want.
saying, so this year, Jamie is the school board representative to the budget committee. Jamie can vote however Jamie wants. Now, if he wants to go against what the school board does, okay, that might not be politically a great thing for him, but Jamie has the right to vote however he wants.
Yeah, I mean, how else would he be voting? Like,
Well,
But having
Well, I
said,
can,
and plus it's
I
Jamie.
can
So
tell
how
you
much you
that
can do about
last year I was told when I was the school board representative to the budget committee, I was told I had to vote. We had a weird year. I was the only one on the school board who voted against the budget. And I was the budget committee representative.
Yeah.
So, but I was told I had to vote how the school board voted, not how I voted.
My take.
That's
on
my
that.
question. And it's going to come up again. That's just why I'm bringing it up.
I think it's
I'm
great
not
to
the
bring it up.
representative anymore. I'm out of it.
I think that's why we're talking about it, because it is confusing and it's a good topic.
I mean, my take on it is nobody can tell an elected member how they will vote. There might be political ramifications to your vote.
Right.
If the board says, we expect you to do A, you say do noted, and you go in and do B, you might not be the representative on the budget committee after that. But nobody can tell an elected, in my opinion, nobody can tell an elected member how they vote the way they want to, and there might be
In
ramifications.
fact, that's why you were elected,
Right.
because of how you are going to vote. So to sort of take that away.
So I think, but I get what you're saying is like you were the representative from us. So you were voting on behalf of the collective.
here's the thing. Here's the question I have. So let's say that because it was bizarre that we had this
I have a
one.
question too, so.
So let me just play this out.
You wanted us to ask the
Yeah.
question.
No,
Now
no.
I'm getting into
I
it
knew
because
this was
love
coming, and
stuff.
that's why
I know
I'm like,
this is-
oh.
I know
Yeah,
this
Jim
is-
was texting me. He's like, "Can we talk?" I'm like, "No, I'm just handing it, man. You're good."
No, it's good.
But no. Here's the. So let's play it out. We're in a board meeting this year, and the board votes one way, the 4-3 split. Jamie's the BudCom rep, and Jamie, I don't think this is going to happen. We have never had this happen, but
Theoreticals.
theoretical, Jamie didn't vote. He was against for the 4-3 split. Dawn then says, Jamie says to Dawn, "I'm not voting for that budget when I go to the BudCom." Dawn says, "Okay, then you're not the rep because you don't represent Dawn has the power to take people off and on committees at any time."
That's why you never tell her before the.
Right,
vote.
yeah.
Well,
Right.
yeah, but look, we know you and we know what you're going to do. I mean, you're so predictable. but I'm just saying that the reality is that it's not even, I know what Jim's saying, that it's a political ramification in terms of at the polls, but there is a practical ramification. What Jim is saying is that you can't make them, but you kind of can.
Okay, that's
You
not-
kind of
that's
can
not how
say
I
to them,
perceived what I was told
Yeah.
last year.
yeah, I understand that.
I told you
And-
at the time,
and-
you do
and-
what you want. but
And
you're not
I
supposed to see
and I
it.
told you that we weren't clear, and we did talk about this, with Jim, right? And we did work it out after, but we're doing it publicly right now, and it
It
is
wouldn't have changed my vote
No.
at the end, but I don't like being told how I will.
right,
vote.
and that's why we worked on it with Jim last year, and we talked about it. But it's
And I'm only bringing it up because Jamie will be in the same position. Otherwise, I
Well,
would tell Jamie how you'll vote.
well, you're just presenting.
Tom and I have
presenting
had
a
this
mess.
before. There's something else where Tom said, well, you have to vote that way. I'm like, I don't have to vote anyway.
Yeah, and we
There
talked
might
about
be a
that.
ramification to it, but
Right.
I don't have to vote anyway.
And you're right.
Yeah, we got Vanessa.
We have Vanessa.
Sorry.
So, and the point I wanted to add to it, and this is why I was not ecstatic about that information being given, is things can come up in the budget committee session that person that's a representative can decide, you know what, I feel as if this budget committee, I actually agree with what they're trying to do. And I want to vote in favor of what they're doing because it's different information than what the school board had voted on. So therefore, you're allowed to make an educated decision based on new information given to you that may change your vote. Now, again, if there's a ramification, the school board comes back and says, hey, you didn't vote with us, you're no longer on. To me, that's a little bit petty, but if people are going to do that, that's fine. But there's, I didn't like the fact that the representative is told you have to vote this way. You're not allowed to make a sound decision based on the information that you're given at that current meeting or that current decision that could change potentially the way that you initially voted. So that was my biggest gripe with the way that everything played out. I'm with Jamie. Don't tell me how I'm going to vote. I'm going to vote how I want to vote, whether you like it or not.
The only exception would be, and this is another section of our materials, so I'm going to just transition to talk a little bit about collective bargaining. In the collective bargaining context, that's another role where a school board and the personnel committee, if you want to call it that, different districts call it different things, where they have a role to, you're the public employer. So you are negotiating collective bargaining agreements with your unions, basically, in the district. So the role of the board can really vary. I know from having done it with you folks that you have board members who actually sit at the table and participate in the table negotiations process, and that's perfectly fine. That's another role of a school board. Because that process is a statutory process and what you're doing is you're negotiating in good faith, there is some restriction, not a absolute ban, but there is some restriction put on board members who participate in negotiations. Because if you're on a negotiating team, and I was on one with at least three of you in the room today, if you're on a negotiating team and you reach a tentative agreement with the union as a team, under law, it's considered bad faith for you to not support that tentative agreement when it moves forward to the board vote. So the PLRB has found that it's bad faith for a member of the team that adopted a TA to then vote against the ratification of the contract when it goes before the board. What's the legal ramifications for that? Well, you get to be told you negotiated in bad faith and go back to the table and do it again. So we don't, fret a lot about that, but that's the only occasion where no one's going to tell you how to vote. You really have to think about whether you want to stand up there and sort of throw the district into this bad faith part of negotiations by speaking out against an agreement. Because presumably if we do it right, and me and Don and Jim and all of us are in a room and we negotiate with the union and the three of them say, okay, I'm okay with this, then to go vote against it when it goes up for ratification is bad faith. And you're also sort of just causing problems for everybody in the process. So that is a time where the conversation about how you vote and what you say is more tricky and nuanced. And I sometimes get involved in conversations with people around what they can and can't do, just so they don't land all of us at the PLRB in a hearing. Any questions about collective bargaining?
No, but that's where the root of our conversation about if the board had a budget that they developed and adopted, that it was a similar feeling that it was not a good message to go and then not vote for it. So when we worked on this last year, it came to light that wasn't accurate, but it is good to know that we've always had a healthy process here where we go back and forth. So we've had a budget that develops at the board level. It goes to the BudCom, and there was one year it went back and forth 3 or 4 times, where the BudCom met, they wanted something, then that went back to the board, then it went back, and December was miserable because we met like every Wednesday to try to get it ironed out. And finally, the two groups split the difference, but they did it, right? We got there. And so we almost always get there eventually, but it's messy sometimes. The last few years, it hasn't been messy. It's been pretty straight ahead.
But I mean, it is quite possible that a budget gets passed by the budget committee, just make up numbers, that is unanimous on the budget committee and that the school board votes unanimously against.
And then that shows on
That's
the warrant
possible.
that it was again.
It
Yeah,
shows on the warrant.
Yeah,
And
it
people
shows on the
decide how
warrant.
they want to decide.
That
Right, and then-
happened in 2017.
Yeah, I mean, that
Did.
can happen.
it did right before I came here.
We try not to make it happen.
We've never had a problem figuring it out, but
Yeah.
you never know.
I mean, my advice is just don't make it too acrimonious and just move along. Like it is the process, and sometimes that happens, and it doesn't mean you're dysfunctional, and it doesn't mean you're not going to have a good school district. Just move on. Budget committees and boards don't always agree, and they don't always come to a point where everyone's happy with what the budget committee's done, and that's just the nature of our system. And so the other things.
Excuse me, it was 2016. Sorry.
Thank God.
Oh, the year
Hold on, let me
before.
write that.
Yeah.
I think we corrected that.
Yeah.
Keep the history.
Yeah.
records.
Yeah.
Someone's out there saying, "Thank you for."
They just stop typing in the letter.
Yeah.
Oh, did you get that?
Yeah. Yeah. They just stopped posting on Facebook.
Right.
17.
Uh,
I get 800 emails.
Oh my God.
I was there. So otherwise, I mean, it's really the role of a board is really like a ministerial role. You're signing check manifests. You're posting things. You're posting meetings. You're making documents available. You're communicating to the public. You're managing records and posting them on your website. You're issuing press statements. You're doing strategic planning, right? You're kind of looking at big picture stuff. It's not the day-to-day stuff. A couple of mantras that I sort of use a lot is that they're in your policy, and I can name the policies, but here's one really easy one. Board members have no authority as individuals with respect to the board. And if you're ever speaking and there's any confusion, good example would be, as a member of the budget committee, I'm not speaking on behalf of the board. I'm speaking on behalf of myself as a member of the board and as a representative here, that I think this budget is good and will be sufficient. And I know my members on the school board won't agree with me, but as an individual, this is what I think. You're never really speaking on behalf of the board, except when the board has given you that express authority. Sometimes the chair, by appointing the chair as the chair, is speaking on behalf of the board and the district on relatively minor matters, but sometimes that's the role of the chair. It's not ever the role of any individual board member when you're acting in your individual capacity to speak on behalf of the full district. And it's a good habit to try to disclaim that or disclose that at the beginning. Sometimes you'll have board, like it used to be this really weird thing. Board members would show up and say, I want to look at so-and-so's personnel file. No, you can't look at a personnel file of an employee in the district. Unless, somehow the board was doing I can't imagine what it would be because we would tell you not to do it. But if you were somehow authorized by the majority of the board to be delegated to do something like that, would you ever as an individual have that power? Otherwise, the board is always acting as a whole board, and your actions happen when you're convened as a board or as a committee.
We're working on the macro level, not the micro or the meso.
Exactly. And it's a good way of thinking about it. And it's also like, if for no other reason than when you're all together making decisions on the macro big picture level, like in this meeting room, that's where all of these nice statutory immunities exist. Like there's a whole bunch of common law immunities, and there's a whole bunch of statutory immunities and rights to indemnification and immune from civil action. That's where they all live. And once you get out of this environment and you're out there doing stuff, unless it's committee work or you've been asked to do it and delegated to do it, those nice things aren't there to protect you anymore, because they're not within the scope of your duty as a board member. So I like to really think about, where do I want to be? I'm like a conservative person with respect to that. So I like to only be doing stuff when I'm in my board meetings. And then when I'm on nonprofit boards, I'm a lawyer. So I'm only making decisions and doing things as a board member, not as an individual, and certainly not as this group's lawyer. As much as they'd like me to be their lawyer, I'm not their lawyer. I'm only an individual. So that's kind of it for roles and responsibilities of board member in an hour. But I will answer any kind of question,
And
even if it's not related to this. I'll make up good answers. 'Cause I'm on TV.
I think Ken was first.
If you're on a subcommittee, should all of your, I guess, work in that subcommittee capacity be part of, I guess, the televised meetings that go on? Or should there be work by you as an individual board member that happens outside of the public purview?
So, you guys throw some interesting questions out there. Subcommittees are public bodies. This is a common misunderstanding. Subcommittees, it's a separate public body. You have a separate quorum number. You have to have public meetings, and your records are public records of that subcommittee. So I know that there are districts in this state that don't post their committee meetings, that don't keep minutes in their committee meetings, and don't talk or do. Public is just not, doesn't access any of their committee meetings, don't even know they're happening, don't post an agenda. So committee meetings are meetings of a separate, smaller public body. Right? Is that making anybody's brain hurt?
No,
Okay,
we do all
good.
that. We've always been very
You
transparent.
are, I feel like you folks are really compliant.
Not
The
exactly.
individual work you're doing
That's
is
the problem.
is an exempt record. So if you got your own personal records, your own personal documents that are not distributed or shared with a quorum of the board, they're just your personal notes that you took, and they're just thank you, good night. These are not public records, whether it's committee or full board. But if you take these notes, or like you've had a whole presentation on grading, and you've talked about that presentation and you shared it online, that's a public record. The presentation you shared is a public record.
But that public record is not the adoption, but the growth of it is supposed to happen in the public purview. It's not supposed to be built to a certain point, taken offline, and then when you come back online, it's changed. You know what I mean? Like, isn't that something that should be worked only?
No, I mean, there's no one way to do it. So if you're looking for like a simple rule, sometimes you get two board members who go off and workshop a thing together and then bring it back and present it to the board. And the before and after can be completely different things. And the thing those two board members workshopped doesn't have to have been workshopped in the public. A lot really, like, the sunshine laws are great, but like all the work really happens behind the scenes in every government and in the entire world. I mean, most of the stuff is actually happening outside of the meeting, and then it's brought here to be discussed and decisions made about that work. If that makes sense.
It does. I know what Ken's asking, and I think it's a great question, and we need to be very clear and transparent about it. Ken's asking if board members on the ISA subcommittee are reviewing math materials. This happened, and there are many of you. You did, Amy did, Tammy Mahoney did. They reviewed them at the SAU office or at the high school building. That's completely appropriate. We don't have to have a video camera there and post a meeting because there's not two people discussing and making a decision. It's when you're discussing and making a decision. It's a great question. And
I was going to say, does that change if it's not just the board member, if it's a board member and say staff? You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
well,
Like,
there-
if it's
there was a
board member
mistake.
and staff meeting, not.
Yeah,
filmed.
there was a mistake made one time in the whole time that I've been here for 5 years, where one of my subordinates allowed a board member to meet with staff, and that will never happen again. It's been addressed one time.
Yeah, if it's a quorum of a subcommittee.
Right, but it's
staff,
more about the
that's-
quorum. The answer is go to the policies, exactly what Jim said earlier on. And the policies for curriculum materials are very clear, and the rules around that are very clear about asking about curriculum materials. But you're right that in my mind, it crosses a line when board members are meeting with staff, and that did happen one time. It's been addressed. Yeah. It was just a miscommunication on the part of my subordinate, and she apologized, and we addressed it.
Just for clarification, there's circumstances where I ask you something, you say, oh, you can talk to Diana about that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Yeah, it's hard because like the central office people, like Diana, Matt, and Patty, or the future person, there are rules about access to educational materials that we have to follow, and we follow them closely.
The bottom line is, he's the boss. good, bad, or indifferent. It all goes with him,
Yep.
right? So you have to ask his permission to talk to people.
Yep.
And he'll let you know if you can. Right?
Yeah, pretty much.
And 99.99% of the time, if somebody on the board is speaking with one of my employees, I'm in the room.
There's this concept too, and I've had conversations with boards, and I've had joint board budget committee meetings where it was very acrimonious. And what I said is, you can ask me a million questions and I can give you a million answers, but at the end of the day, the whole system relies on you folks just working together and being reasonable, decent, civil people. Because if you want to be jerks, there's a lot of ways to make this system not run. So you've, at some level, keep doing what you're doing. Mistakes get made, but there's enough there's enough play in the joints, which is sometimes hear that phrase. There's enough play in the joints for flexibility and decisions to be made and stuff to happen. And if people just respect each other and keep doing things in a civil way, you'll be fine.
Can I bring up social media? I get tagged all the time in Facebook to answer questions, and I try not to engage, or other board members get engaged. How are we supposed to manage that?
Send it to Jim.
Yeah.
No, simple. Don't engage.
Yeah.
I think so. I
Yeah.
think social
Don't
media
engage.
really made it very difficult to stay impartial too, like living in the community. Like there's sometimes we hear about things that we really don't want to hear about. So I think that plays a role.
Yeah, like come up with a phrase that you're comfortable with that says, thank you for your comment. My work on the board is very important to me, and your comments are important to me. Our next meeting is on such and such a date. I encourage you to come and speak to the board. But my policy is not to speak on district matters over social media. I mean, just find a way to politely stay the heck out of it.
Or refer them back to me.
That's a little wordy for me.
Yeah.
I just don't post.
I just.
But for people who feel like they need to feel bad that they're not politely, but people feel like they have to write something. So, I would really try to resist the urge as a board member. You should not feel obligated to be out there saying anything or responding to anybody about district stuff. Let superintendent deal with that. It's not a macro level thing. This is where you're dealing with stuff. So you can, right? I have board members who are out there on social media getting themselves sued, frankly, all over the state.
Yep.
And I don't even bother warning them because they know and they don't care. But if you want to just avoid it, I would encourage you not to engage on social media about this work. Or just say, I'm happy to receive your feedback. I'm not going to respond. I encourage you to come to our next board meeting if you'd like to say this to the board.
Jim, make sure you're clear though, if it's on the agenda. If it's not on the agenda, they need to follow we have a chain of command that we address. Our public comment is based on what's on the agenda.
They can submit their comments in writing too.
Yes, that's always a great idea.
That's what I usually say.
Yes,
If you
send an
have
email.
concerns, please send an email.
Generally speaking, if they're posting things, even tagging you on social media, it's not that they're trying to communicate with you. They're trying to make an issue, make a point, or do something publicly. It's got nothing to do with the communication with you. They know what your email address is. They really had a question for you that they wanted a response to. They send you an email.
I always use the ping pong match analogy. That's my famous analogy, which is like, especially in social media, what are people reading the comments for? The tit for tat. Like it's like this
Like
says
the
this
Michael
and they
Jackson
say-
meme with the popcorn.
And so like to me, it's like, well, unplug the DVD player and just, if there's no tit for tat, no one's following up, and they'll just move on to the next TikTok video and they'll stop looking at the comment section. If you stop writing and you, no one will read it, and it kind of just will end. Let them talk amongst themselves. But by throwing our opinions into it, we all of a sudden like make it look legitimate and credible and worth hearing about.
So this advice is why my Facebook posts are not commentable. They're for information from the district, and frankly, soon it's going to become the Sanborn Regional School District Facebook page, not Tom Ambrose. I'm not in there to debate with people. I'm in there to share information that's important, like we hired this new principal, or we have this event coming up, or that's the purpose of Facebook. It's just to get information out and communicate with people. I think that it's super important for everyone to understand that that the real work of the school district happens in the school day to day with the teachers and the kids.
That's your, yeah.
Go ahead.
That's your interpretation of Facebook. Unfortunately, that's not the majority.
Right.
Of the
Right. No,
people.
that's what I'm using it for the
Oh,
school.
I
district purposes.
agree.
Yeah. For a lot of people, they think it's the truth or it's a political thing, whatever.
I mean, it's not, everything you read's not the truth.
I
No.
still have a question.
That's why I call it
And
Facebook.
I have a question too. Sorry, I've been holding.
Rick.
I just
that's
wanted clarification just regarding like community members, including myself. I've sent emails to the board. And I just want clarification that, you know, I understand that if it's regarding policies, the board shouldn't be commenting back on emails from community members. They should funnel those through Tom. But like, what is the clarification line for board members being able to respond to the public? Because quite frankly, not everybody wants to communicate with Tom. So some people prefer to communicate with the board and sort of forego Tom. So what are they allowed to answer and what are they not allowed to answer?
Well, who's speaking for the board? This
Like
is-
community members that
the
email the
board's-
board about concerns or.
Yeah, you can, but the board speaks like at its meetings. So
But if it's not an agenda item, you're not allowed to talk about it. So you may email the board about concerns
mhm.
to bring things to their attention. You know, and it, like there's a process. So they have their agenda that they want to talk about things. And as a community member, you may say, hey, I have a concern about A, B, and C. I'd like to get some feedback, ask very directed questions. You know, so it's a means of communicating with the board on certain things.
I think there's a slight misconception, and the misconception is that because the board is there,
Mhm.
I should be able to get answers to my questions from the board. And that's really not how the system works. The system works, this is a board who's in charge with running a district. They have a superintendent who they've hired to manage the day-to-day affairs. And community members can write and submit concerns to the board anytime they want. And when it's appropriate during public comment, they can speak on, I guess this is your policy right now, on agenda items. Whether the board responds or gives you the information or has an answer for every member of the community is entirely up to the board, but it's certainly not necessarily going to happen, necessarily a best practice, and really not the board's job. I mean, it sounds rude because they want the community to feel respected and heard, but the board has a lot of things to do. And if everybody in the community sent 10 questions and wanted 10 answers, they'd never get to their work. So, you know, it's hard. So the board tries to strike a balance of addressing and responding, but they don't always get a chance.
Okay. Fair enough.
So the answer is people are supposed to work through me. I represent the board in the day-to-day functioning of the school district. As Rick said, like it or not,
Yeah.
that's my role, is to speak for the board in the day-to-day functioning of the district. If community members are bypassing me, Vanessa, and emailing the whole board, I can assure you they're forwarding them to me. That's my
Yeah.
job. You can't really bypass me, Vanessa, is the message.
Yeah.
You can't by policy, unless I break the law. If I sexually harass someone or if I stole money and Matt caught it, Matt would call Jim. That'd be kind of funny. Matt would call Jim and talk to Diana and they would deal. I mean, the things that I get dealt with are if I break laws. We don't break laws. We don't, it just doesn't work like that. So, I mean, really, we're kind of way off topic here because this whole thing is about the board, but it is about the board. It's about the board. No one person speaks on behalf of the board. So when they respond to your email, they have to be very careful, because if you send an email to the board that prompts me to do a serious investigation and the board member responds and gets involved in it with the community, they then cannot be the functioning role of the board of adjudicating the situation if it gets to a board level hearing. And I know it's hard and we don't like it. I'm not saying I even like it. It just is what it is.
I'm very so Jim, I'm an elected official.
Mm.
Okay, so if somebody sends me an email, not the board, me as an elected official, as long as it's not about personnel or policy, I can respond.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to make sure
Yeah.
we're clear on that too.
Yeah.
You know, I think the message we want to make sure, is out there is that, if you send the board, the entire board, a message and you copy everybody, first of all, we can't reply unless, because you got the chance of replying to all, and then you have a meeting, right?
Right, exactly. Exactly.
So-
That's another issue.
Yeah, so I think everybody on the board that I've discussed with is pretty responsive to emails that they
Mhm.
receive.
Mhm.
And if you don't get a response from a member that you email, there are several other members that you can try to get that response from.
Just from my experience, there's kind of polls on the board. Some people have been burned on the board where they send a response out of their opinion and it gets copied and pasted in
Screenshotted
different
and
ways and it gets
pasted
posted
everywhere
on when it was supposed to be just a discussion.
Yep.
And so those people have decided I'm not playing anymore. It doesn't work. Others, I'm one of them. I'll respond to any email I get, and it's my opinion, and I say that. Well, this is what I believe,
Right, but you're being clear.
That's
and
exactly correct.
Yeah.
And if you got burned, you feel like you got burned, then you probably said something that wasn't true to you, and you probably shouldn't send it to begin with. So you shouldn't send anything that you wouldn't want posted somewhere else.
My rule of thumb with administrators is if you don't want it on the front page of the newspaper, don't put it in writing. Because I'll tell you, my wife's superintendent recently had that happen. And that's true for you. If you don't want it on the front of the newspaper, don't put it in writing. You're a public organization.
Vanessa, I still have a question unless you want to get another one in before.
Let's slow roll this.
No, I'm good.
All right, Rick, what is your
My
question?
question goes back to our conversation we had I think, yesterday, maybe, or the day before. But I'm trying to organize with the boosters of the schools to have a back to school barbecue here at the high school in August. I discussed it with Dawn. So it wouldn't be school board sponsored. But would we invite the parents, the new teachers, the new administrators? Dawn expressed some concern that it could be an issue for us to attend, the school board members, because it could be,
There's more than a quorum there. Is it? I've been told in the past.
Four
you
of us
can't-
or 5 of us all.
You're
have
not meeting.
to go to school.
Well, but that's what I've been told in the past. So that's why we wanted to clarify this.
I'd like clarity on this.
Because if,
I'd like
There-
to know the answer to this. She's asking a great question.
yeah, because I've wanted to do this for a couple of years.
Just
But I've
do
been
it.
told because,
yeah, I got my answer right
yeah,
there.
It's
Okay.
like,
What's next?
you're susceptible to somebody saying, oh, but they really did talk budget stuff, even if you didn't. Somebody could say that and they could try to make an issue out of it. But generally speaking, if you really didn't, they're not going to be able to prevail.
do you,
with it. So it's worth the risk.
do you, like post a board meeting, like if you all go to graduation, someone will run up to the microphone, hold on.
well, and that's where
that's
that's
a
where
good
my
one.
question was,
Point.
because we have a policy about school functions where if, a quorum of the board is there, they can be because it's a school function and it doesn't have to be noticed as long as school business isn't being discussed.
Right.
So that's where I
Yeah,
felt like,
this gets to the point of
Yeah.
absurdity where I'm like,
Right.
no, I'm not even.
Right.
Like, please,
so we
someone,
can just do this.
please,
because-
let's go to court and have
Thank
someone
God.
say you violated
Okay.
rights.
Well, like we're having a barbecue. I was curious about this because we're actually having a kind of somewhat spontaneous barbecue on Friday. And I wanted to invite board members if they'd like to come, if they can. I know they're working, or BudCom members too. It's at 11 o'clock and we're just going to have all the staff come to the high school. I'm going to sling the hash, and I wanted people to feel like they could, because the staff have reported to me that they want to feel more connected.
Can I bring my tiny human?
Yeah, I don't care.
Yeah,
I just want you all to feel
Tom,
like
I gotta applaud
you
you.
could just drop in.
I gotta applaud you on the heads up and the time frame of Friday.
Well, no, we just decided today that we had the room to do it. We didn't have it before, right? So we're being spontaneous.
They don't have the extra plate for you, Rick. That's the issue.
I really didn't want you to be there. I was trying to exclude you, Rick.
He's trying to
No,
exclude
but
me too. It's fine. It's
But
fine.
if we are going to get together Friday, and Matt and I met at 3 o'clock today and decided that we could do this, that I wanted to feel comfortable inviting people to come, but I'm glad you brought this up, Dawn, because I wasn't sure what to do.
It was, yeah.
Thanks.
Thank
That's
you, Rick.
helpful.
Well, and I said that I can't say who I got the idea from, but I did tell the person that I would say that I got the idea from a very intelligent person that I spoke with.
Aha, cool. So I think, is that it? Is there anything else that you? Yep.
Just to put a pin on it, the statute says a social gathering not convened for the purpose of discussing or acting upon school board matters shall not constitute a meeting.
Thank you.
So I can
No
have
decisions
everybody-
are made and no discussions.
We can go to your
That-
house
You
for.
can actually have cookouts now?
Yeah, you always could. You
Oh,
just-
thank God.
Oh, I like this way better.
This
Sweet.
is way nicer.
August.
Sorry.
Seriously.
I gave you bad advice.
Yeah, just let me know what time.
There's a.
I was
Yeah,
talking
Jim's
about,
coming. Jim's coming.
Oh, yeah.
Rick, we're gonna be at your house
I was
Friday
saying
afternoon.
like I can have the board over.
Yeah, you're cool.
The board can come over to my house for cookout.
Lake party.
So long as the puppy's there.
Lake party.
Yeah.
Just don't discuss any school board business.
No.
I don't
it's
know if we
just-
could do that.
That's the thing. Like, with you. Courtney's like, oh my goodness. what have I
There'd
got
have to
myself
be enough
into?
other people there.
See, I
All right.
want to talk about, I just want to talk about like, our kids and stuff.
Yeah.
Okay.
I know.
Are we moving on?
We talk about board
Do you
stuff
have
way too much.
any
here.
other
We don't
questions?
Talk about it anywhere else.
No, you need to relax.
I think I'm good.
Thank you, Jim.
Obviously. My excuse.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You must
No, I
love,
want you to stay.
you
You're
love
welcome.
hanging out with us, don't you?
I do actually.
If
My
someone
third
wants
meeting
to,
this week, so a little
someone
late.
wants to bring us into non-public, they can, and then I'm going to take a quick break. So
I'd like to move for us to go into non-public session RSA 91-A semicolon 3 to C.
Second that motion.
all right,
Thank you, Jim.
roll call vote. Rick,
Yes.
Heather,
Welcome.
Yes.
Jim,
Yes.
Thanks for being here, everyone.
Maura,
Yes.
and myself, yes. All right. We are back in public session. We have a motion to seal the minutes in perpetuity.
I'd like to make a motion to seal the minutes in perpetuity.
Second.
All in favor? Unanimous? Great. All right.
I'd like to make a motion for withdrawal of 2 special education teacher salaries from the Special Education Expendable Trust Fund only if necessary.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Okay, great. And now I have to say, the next Sanborn Regional School Board meeting will be held on Wednesday, August 17th, 2022 at 6:30 p.m. in the library at Sanborn Regional High School. Meeting's now adjourned.
See y'all in August.